venues in Blantyre and Lilongwe, but also virtually for colleagues that are joining us online. Can you hear us online? Good afternoon, colleagues online. Hopefully you can hear us. Blantyre.
Good afternoon, we can hear you.
Good afternoon, we
Yeah,
can hear you.
We hear you loud and clear.
Blantyre, can you hear us? Great, thank you so much. So welcome to this session. And before we start, just do a bit of housekeeping. Please, our colleagues that are online, make sure that you're on mute and also your videos are off to have a proper bandwidth for the transmission. But also those that are attending physically, let's minimize the disturbances because that's easily transmitted online. Keep your laptops on mute if you also have an online connection, but you are also in the venues, either in Blantyre or Lilongwe, so that we can easily and peacefully coordinate this event. Before we start, we're going to do a round of introductions. This is just to make sure that we know everyone who is in the room, but also colleagues that are joining from different parts. Others are in Pretoria, others are in Blantyre, and others are in different places in the US and also in other countries. So we'll run a round of introduction. Myself, my name is Dagrum Sisha. I'm the country representative for the USA Trade Hub here in Malawi. We work with the different stakeholders that are involved in exporting to the US as well as South Africa. Those exporting to the US are using the African Growth and Opportunity Act, AGOA, and those that are also exporting to South Africa using the different export regimes. So we are here today to share about AGOA exporting to the US and also the different requirements and all the information and the skills that you need to know. So go around in the room. There should be a mic somewhere, and I'll ask my colleagues to pass the mic around. We'll start with Lilongwe, then we'll go to Blantyre, and then we'll go online. Starting with colleagues in Lilongwe, let's pass the mic, please, for self-introductions. Thank you.
We couldn't hear that. We couldn't hear that. We couldn't hear that lady. There's no sound.
And there's background static.
Okay, sorry, it was me. Nothing to do with anyone else other than me. I didn't have it on properly, sorry. Let me try again. Frances Fraser, Portfolio Manager at the USA Trade Hub. I support our teams here in Malawi, Botswana, and Namibia with our work on the ground. Normally based out of Pretoria and enjoying being here in Lilongwe for the week. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is William Peter Mware. I'm the National Executive Director for SMEs in Malawi, commonly known as NASME. As a living, I also grow mushrooms in Mchinji. And as an association, we have a group of SMEs who would want to go to AGOA market, and they're already certified by MBS, but we still have to go for a further step so that we are accepted in the AGOA market.
Thank you. My name is Alfred Osunsoya. I'm an agro-processor. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Tola Newa. I'm the Liaison Officer for Commercial Federation of Women in Business. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Floriani Kamanga. I'm a chairperson of Women in Extractive Industries, and I'm also a member of NAZME. Thank you.
Afternoon. My name is Rinda Nkonjera Fazili. I'm a member of Women in Extractive Malawi, and I'm also a head of A&W Investment, basically in agro-drilling. Thank you.
Yeah, good afternoon. My name is Vincent Caetano, a consultant for the Trade Investment Hub in doing value chain assessments and profiling for AGOA.
Good afternoon. My name is Vanessa Magwangwala. I'm representing African Honey and Food Products. We're experts in beekeeping and honey products.
Good afternoon. I'm Keisha Nyorenda Chamba. I'm the founder of Mighty Processors Limited Company. Basically, we are agro processing company looking at dried fruits and fish as well as meat products. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Shaneva Chamba. I'm the co-founder and the director of Mighty Processors Limited Company. Yeah, we are into food processing, as the founder said. Thank you.
Afternoon. My name is Kondwani Chijota. I'm from a social enterprise based in Kota Kota called Gem Farming. Thank you.
Afternoon. My name is Deepa Nungwe and I'm also from Gem Farming.
Good afternoon. My name is Manota Pande. I'm from Moringa Acres.
Good afternoon. I'm Madali Somukiwa, aspiring entrepreneur.
My name is Charles Nyekanyeka. I'm from Blantyre Institute.
Good afternoon. My name is Frank Lamama. I'm the Regional Monitoring, Evaluation and Learning Manager for the Southern Trade and Investment Hub based in Pretoria, supporting all the countries. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Charles Kalamba. I'm from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Gloria Shara. I'm from Lilongwe Textile and Tailoring Cooperative. We have a shop at Golden Peacock. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So Lilongwe is packed and has started it. Can we hear from Blantyre? Can we have introductions from Blantyre? Please, the Blantyre crew, move the mic around so that we can have the guests from Blantyre, the delegates from Blantyre introduce themselves. Over to you, Blantyre. Thank you.
Hello. Hello. Can you?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, my name is Nelly. I am the country program assistant for the U.S. Trade Hub in Malawi. Thank you.
Thank you, Nelly. My name is Michelle Mashana. I'm Monitoring and Evaluation Officer at the USA Trade Hub based in Pretoria. Thank you.
I'm Robina Kazonde from Nabil.
Good afternoon, everyone. Myself, Pinal Patel from the Agro Industries Limited based in Limbi. We have a processing facility of pulses.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Santosh Shanai. I am the logistics manager for ETG Southern Region.
Good afternoon. My name is Ande Ngalawa. I'm representing AK Plastics Industries.
Good afternoon. My name is Aidan Queen, Nabil member.
Scope Enterprises trading.
Afternoon. The director. I do beekeeping. Thanks.
Bangwe factory.
We don't have a visual from Blantyre, and sound is. Hello?
Afternoon. My name is Evelyn Kasawala from Malawi Council for the Handicapped, Bangwe Factory.
Good afternoon. My name is Samuel Gandiziwa from Blantyre Agriculture Development Division.
Good afternoon. My name is Joanna Msukwa and I'm an aspiring entrepreneur.
Good afternoon. I'm Jamal Kamoto representing CDH Investment Bank, a leading specialist bank in Malawi. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Annie Kazembe. I'm representing Pride Enterprises. They are experts in aquacultural inputs.
Good afternoon. My name is Batrio Mizimbe. I'm representing Quality Arts International. I'm an exporter in the agribusiness commodities. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Paul Konje. I'm Quality Monitoring Officer at Malawi Bureau of Standards. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Lynette Munifumbo. I'm representing Nabiwe.
Good afternoon. My name is Maggie Jimpogoso, representing Food Hub Limited. I'm also a member of NASME, Blantyre chapter. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Florence Ngosi. I'm representing Nabiwi. I'm also into agro business.
Good afternoon. My name is Esther Chongwe, the owner of AG Investment. We are into agro business. Thank you.
Afternoon. My name is Stanley House, Managing Director of Home Oils. We process oil from seeds like moringa seeds, from baobab seeds, and from neem seeds and other seeds into cosmetic and other products.
My name is Garnet House, accountant for Home Oils. Thank you.
That would be all from Blantyre. Thank you.
We can't hear you. We cannot hear you.
Can you hear me now? Okay, it seems I'm back.
Yes, now it's clear.
Let me know. Very good. So our first online participant is Chrissy Chiweza. If you could please come on screen and introduce yourself, Chrissy.
Because I'm not Chrissy Chiweza.
Chrissy, we can't hear you. I can see you are unmuted.
Hello. Am I still on mute?
Go ahead, we hear you.
Okay, I'm Krista Chiweza.
Welcome, Chrissy. Okay, let's go to Elizabeth Mvula. Please also say where you're from. Elizabeth. Okay, Elizabeth, I don't hear you. I'm going to move on to Mr. George Watson.
Hello.
Hello, this is George Watson, technical representative of Gem Farming, Dakota Kota.
Welcome. Thanks, George, all the way from Michigan. Next, we'll go to Harrison Chamanga. Harrison.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm Harrison Kamanga, representing Hot Spice. I'm based in Lilongwe. We produce spices like ginger, turmeric, and garlic, and the other horticulture crops such as chia and tomatoes and chilies. Thank you.
Very good. It sounds like you make a lot of the fragrant and delicious things that I like. Hendrine Kachule, you are next. Forgive my pronunciation if I have it wrong. Hendrine. Hendrine, are you there?
Yes.
Going once.
So, sorry, I was muted. So I'm Tanzine Katule. I'm working with GIZ MIERA, which stands for More Income and Employment in Rural Areas. So we're working in agriculture, tourism, and building materials as well as trade. Thank you.
Thanks, Hendrine. I struggled a bit to hear that, so maybe you could just drop into the chat which sectors you are from. I think I heard agriculture, but I didn't hear very well. Thanks, Hendrine, and welcome. We will move to Kumbutso. I can't see your full name. My apologies. Kumbutso. If you could go next.
Yes. And can you hear me?
Yes, very well. Please go ahead.
All right. I'm Kumbutso Takomana, representing Aichi Company Limited. We are into agriculture, and we also packaging the Aichi Honey brand.
Lovely. Welcome. Thanks, Kumbutso. Next, we have Malumbo. Malumbo, are you there?
Oh, yeah. Good afternoon. I'm Malumbo Gondwe from Tingi, Clean Brands Director. We are into new processes. Thank you.
I couldn't hear you very well. Is he from TVs? Okay.
I'm Malumbo Gondwe. I'm Malumbo Gondwe from Tingi.
Okay, thanks, Malumbo. Your sound is not great. Maybe you could just drop it in the chat as well in case people want to connect with you. Moving on to Margaret Nguira. Margaret?
Good afternoon. We are calling from Lilongwe from Linga Winery Limited. We are export ready. We have ISO 22000 MS certification, and we're very interested to find what changes are happening in AGOA as a result of COVID for exporting food products. I'm here with two of our placement students. Thank you very much. Also, the chat box is not showing. If the organizer can maybe set up the chat box, it's not visible.
Okay, thanks for the feedback. We'll look into that. I'm assuming that you mean that there isn't a chat option on the top toolbar or the bottom toolbar?
It's not showing. There's only raising hands, but no chat box.
Okay,
Thank
we'll
you.
see what we do on that. Thanks very much. Let's then move on to our next guest, who is Naomi Kamanga. Naomi?
Good afternoon. My name is Naomi Kamanga, as you have said. I am the founder and managing director of Panachi Nutri, involved in the production and the processing of chia seeds. Our brand is the Panachi brand of organic chia seeds. Thank you.
Thanks, Naomi. I came a lot recently. Nice to be in touch. Next, we're moving to Tokozane Njima. Tokozane.
Good afternoon. My name is Tokozane Njima, working with GIZ Malawi on a trade facilitation project between Malawi and Zambia. Thank you.
Lovely, welcome. Then we have Peter Manda from the USA Trade Hub in Zambia. I'm going to skip over to Peter Nkata.
Good afternoon. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
I'm Peter Nkata. I'm a consulting engineer interested in the cotton, but I'd just like to know more about AGOA and how it operates. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you, Peter. Welcome. Then we're moving to Thomas Singani. Thomas, are you there? Okay, Thomas, we'll skip over you and move to Zilani Gondwe.
Hi, I'm Zilani Gondwe. I'm the founder and director of Zillies, and we process horticultural products into great condiments in winter.
Lovely. Thank you so much. So we've really got, I think, quite a strong concentration around the food and agricultural sector, specialized in processed foods, but also a few other interested parties involved in trade, engineering. So welcome, everyone. I didn't introduce everyone from the USA Trade Hub that's online, but a warm welcome to our colleagues from Pretoria and elsewhere in the region. Thank you for supporting this event. Over to you, Doug.
Thank you, Francis. In fact, you've set the stage well for you to give us opening remarks. Thank you. A big round of applause to Francis as she comes to the stage.
Good afternoon again, everyone, and thank you for the warm welcome. Today, I would like to recognize the members of the AGOA Steering Committee who are here, and also those who were unable to attend due to traveling, but who are very supportive of this event. So in their absence, Mr. Mayisu Msukera and Charity Mzonzo from the Ministry of Trade, then Mr. Fred Sekwezi from Malawi Bureau of Standards, Julio Mpinga from the Malawi Revenue Authority, and Granford Banda from MITC, who I think will hopefully join us later online, unless I'm missing. Yeah. All protocols observed. I hope I haven't left any important people out, but a very warm welcome, particularly to our AGOA Steering Committee members. I think in terms of what I would like to share today, there is a very strong commitment from the US government to work with the Malawian private sector to advance exports to the United States under the African Growth and Opportunity Act. Just a few weeks ago, on the 20th of May, His Excellency Ambassador David Young visited South Africa to meet with some of the key stakeholders in the South African environment, and to meet with us as the USA Trade Hub to try and understand our work, the opportunities that exist for Malawian exporters both in South Africa and in the United States. Our work in Malawi is evidence of the fact that there is such a strong commitment to... Sorry, can everyone hear me okay now? The US government, through the USAID, the United States Agency for International Development, and particularly the USA Trade Hub, has been doing work in Malawi under the USA Trade Hub program for nearly 6 years. At the end of September, we will have completed our 6-year project term. Some examples of the work that we've been focusing on in terms of supporting Malawi to take advantage of AGOA include working with the ministry, the secretariat for the AGOA steering committee around developing an AGOA strategy. And this identifies key priority sectors in Malawi that are competitive in the United States and which mark the priority sectors for Malawi in terms of exports to the US. This workshop fits within that. It's about how do we operationalize that strategy? How do we ensure that Malawian stakeholders and exporters understand the mechanics of exporting to the United States and taking advantage of the AGOA Trade Preference Program, which offers duty-free access to the United States for almost 6,500 products. So it's a really excellent opportunity for Malawian firms to take advantage of trade with the United States. Another example of the work that we've been doing is we recently supported 2 Malawian firms to attend the Summer Fancy Food Show in New York. This is a signature event on our calendar. It was the 66th Summer Fancy Food Show that was held at the Javits Convention Center in New York. We supported 40 regional firms to attend. From Malawi, Homes Industries and Tantwe Farms were there. They met with several different buyers, distributors and importers, and they also participated in a market intelligence session that was organized in partnership with the South African Consulate General in New York, and which exposed them to the market there, different buyers, banks, and so forth. Another really great example and opportunity for Malawian firms to access the US market is through the work that we're doing to list firms on Amazon. So if you think about trying to get into a large retailer like Whole Foods or Target or Home Depot, it's really tough. They are approached by suppliers day in and day out, and it's a huge market. But Amazon presents an opportunity where you can send a pallet of products and you can test the market without having to try and access a large US retailer. And you can understand customer feedback. You can start understanding whether your product is relevant in the US market. So we recently supported firms to launch on Amazon. From Malawi, Mzuzu Coffee is currently under the process of receiving support to list on Amazon. With a firm called Albert Scott, they're a specialized e-commerce management company that helps firms to list their products in an appealing way, to make sure that they come up on the search engine optimization under the Google searches, and to ensure that they feature in terms of when shoppers are looking for great coffee, Mzuzu comes up on the list. In terms of some of the other work that we're doing, we've also worked with 16 companies in Malawi to prepare what we call an investment memorandum. It's basically something which helps capital seekers to approach capital providers. So if you're raising capital and you want to put your best foot forward, an investment memorandum summarizes your business plan, your financial plans, your projections. It is an all-in-one document that presents the business to a potential funder and which expresses the need that you have for capital. So we worked with 16 companies in Malawi to develop these, and we've introduced to different capital providers in South Africa to raise expansion capital or trade finance. And this is to raise about $16 million across those different firms. Some small amounts, some larger, but that's really in our effort around assisting firms to raise capital so that they can take advantage of export opportunities. Maybe the last example of the work which I would want to share is the collaboration that we have with MITC, the Malawi Investment and Trade Center, and the Ministry of Trade around the AGOA Exporter Awards, an event which they're leading and which we're supporting to really promote and expose exporters that are going above and beyond, that are seeing success, and that are marking the way in terms of succeeding in the export market. What we want to do is recognize exporters that are having success, creating jobs, that are spurring growth in the Malawian economy. And that's one way of doing it. If somebody's doing a good job, let's recognize them and learn from them. So hopefully later on in the calendar, you'll hear something more about the Malawi Exporter of the Year. With that, just to confirm that there's a strong commitment to working with private sector in Malawi to prepare firms to be export ready, to take advantage of this great opportunity in AGOA, and to create economic growth in Malawi through these efforts. I look forward to a very interactive afternoon. It was nice to have all the introductions and to see so many people here. So please be participative. We've got a really great program lined up, I hope, that's filled with different elements and different bits of information that would be useful to you. So please feel free to ask questions and let us know how it's going as the afternoon continues. Thank you so much. Good.
Bit faint. Can we have a big round of applause for Francis? Thank you. Thank you very much, Francis, and thank you for highlighting the importance of this event, but also importance of the partnerships that we have built in the ecosystem where the AGOA implementation occurs. AGOA is sub-Saharan African countries, and Malawi is one of the countries. Therefore, certain effort, and Francis has highlighted those partnerships as well as the networks and driving the agenda, especially the AGOA Steering Committee, which is its secretariat is at the Ministry of Trade, and also the partners like the Malawi Investment and Trade Center, also the Chambers of Commerce and Industries, and the business member organizations and associations that bring people together to be able to work towards the AGOA. So that short, that was a crisp summary of the importance of this occasion, but also thank you everyone for coming here. As we proceed, I'll still invite Francis for the next agenda item. So the next agenda item is for Francis to highlight the USA trade market activities and then being able to showcase some videos. Over to you. Another round of applause, please.
Getting paid with applause today. So I should have probably just stayed up here. But maybe just, there's a slide up there. So just to touch on that before I talk more about some of the US market activation activities. I've mainly been focusing on objective 3, which is, supporting Malawian firms and governments to take advantage of the African Growth and Opportunity Act. Got 2 other key areas of focus. The one, raising capital from South Africa. I touched on that as well. And then secondly, or the first objective, is to help companies in Malawi to export to South Africa. The big economy, it presents an opportunity for Malawi. That is part of the rationale. There's a good market. It's also quite a challenging, sophisticated market with tough standards. So it's a good hurdle or stepping stone to use if you're wanting to go into the United States. So Doug touched on the importance of partnerships, and I think absolutely true in of the United States. We rely a lot on working with what we call trade promotion service providers or partners that are on the ground in the US, that have networks with buyers, that understand the trends in the market, and that can help us to link Malawian suppliers with US buyers. So that's one of the main ways in which we work to access the US market. We also do work like linking firms to Amazon, as I touched on. So I think we've touched enough on our way of working or our approaches as the USA Trade Hub. What I would like to do now is we've developed a few short videos that really summarize what is AGOA, what are the benefits, how does it work. It's the sort of setting the scene in terms of what AGOA is. And so please sit back, relax. It will take a few minutes. There are 3 videos. They're each a couple of minutes, not long, and they'll just in terms of what we're talking about. Mamosa, at this stage, we see it coming up on screen. Thank you. Over to you. Mamosa, we don't have sound.
The African Growth and Opportunity Act, or AGOA for short, is the United States legislation that enhances market access to the US for eligible African countries. How is this done? By allowing duty-free imports into the United States for thousands of different products that originate in sub-Saharan Africa. With no duty payable, your products can enter the US market at more competitive prices. This makes them more affordable to US customers, increasing demand for them and ultimately bolstering economic and business growth in Africa.
AGOA comes with a lot of benefits because it puts our pricing at a competitive level, which makes our products very affordable.
Having our products getting into the US duty-free makes a massive difference as far as breaking into that market.
The consumers in America are paying less for our products.
To benefit from the African Growth and Opportunity Act, 4 general eligibility requirements must be met. Firstly, the country of export must be eligible. In Southern Africa, this includes Angola, Botswana, Eswatini, Lesotho, Malawi, the DRC, Mozambique, Namibia, South Africa, and Zambia. Secondly, the product must be eligible. There are more than 6,400 products that qualify under AGOA for duty-free access. Product eligibility can be found in the Harmonized Tariff Schedule, which is accessible on the internet. Thirdly, the product must be imported directly from the country of origin, or if it is shipped via another country, it cannot enter that country's commercial space. And lastly, the product must meet the requirements of origin rules. The origin rules acknowledge that a product originating in one country may include parts or materials that also come from other countries. In these cases, there are certain criteria that apply. For example, at least 35% of the parts, materials, or ingredients must come from the country of origin. If your product satisfies these 4 requirements, you can take advantage of AGOA's duty-free benefits.
Because we are producing a product from scratch in Eswatini from start to finish, we are eligible for AGOA. You have to prove that you're actually manufacturing the goods here. You can't be importing and re-exporting. You have to add value to the product.
Now that I know about the USA Trade and Investment Hub, finding the information that I require to export, it's so easy.
Find out more about AGOA in the AGOA Export User Manual or by contacting the USAID Southern Africa Trade and Investment Hub. Expanding your horizons could help grow your business and the economy of your community, country, and continent.
While Mamusa is bringing the next video up, just to let you know, these are all available on our website. At the bottom of the banner, satihub.com. So if you want to go and look at them again, you can access them under the video gallery.
If you want to export goods to the United States and take advantage of the African Growth and Opportunity Act, or AGOA for short, it is important to know about the laws and processes that need to be followed, such as what has to happen in order for your products to be allowed into the US. Here, it's the importer who's responsible for clearing the goods through the United States Customs.
Hi, Mamusa. We are seeing your folders and we are hearing the video sound, but we're not actually seeing the video playing.
Okay, just give me a second, please.
No problem. I think it's the first time we're doing an event in Blantyre, Lilongwe, Pretoria, else. So please bear with us. I think.
To export goods to the United States. If you want to export goods to the United States and take advantage of the African Growth and Opportunity Act, or AGOA for short, it is important to know about the laws and processes that need to be followed, such as what has to happen in order for your products to be allowed into the US. Here, it's the importer who's responsible for clearing the goods through the United States Customs and Border Protection. They must do this by filing certain documents, both before the goods leave Africa and when the shipment reaches the US. Although this is the importer's responsibility, it is beneficial for you to be familiar with the process, as they will require essential information from you. It's also fundamental to know that all goods imported into the United States must be classified using the Harmonized Tariff Schedule. This schedule classifies thousands of different products, from silk to soap and footwear to fruit. It also indicates the duties payable on each product. To find out if your goods are eligible for duty-free benefits, use the schedule to find the product you want to export. Then, under Rates of Duty, look in the column titled Special. If there is a D that corresponds to your product, that indicates that your goods are eligible to be imported duty-free under AGOA. The AGOA Export Manual contains useful links to help you find out more, including a helpful harmonized tariff search tool. When you export goods, they need to be valued. This is a necessary part of the filing that the importer has to complete. The value is usually based on the transaction value, which is the price you invoice the importer for, plus certain additional amounts that they may need to pay, such as packing costs, commissions, or license fees. Finally, the origin of goods can affect whether they'll be admitted into the US, how much will be allowed, and how they need to be marked. Most products imported into the US need to be marked with the name of the country of origin. The general rule is that goods are a product of the country they were grown, manufactured, processed, or transformed in. A product would be considered transformed if, for example, it contained parts or materials from several different countries. In these cases, there are certain rules that determine its eligibility under AGOA. These are some of the fundamentals of US customs laws and AGOA eligibility. Being familiar with them will help you make the most of the benefits. You'll find out more detailed information and links in the AGOA Export User Manual, or find out more by contacting the USAID Southern Africa Trade and Investment Hub.
So the last video is going to focus a bit more on food and agriculture. There is actually a fourth one on textiles and apparel, so we're not showing that today, but it is on our website. So over to Mamosa for the food and ag. Thanks.
If you export agricultural products, food, or beverages to the United States, there are specific requirements that apply. They entail upfront and ongoing work and investment on your part, but they are essential to ensure that you can start and continue to export your goods smoothly and take advantage of the duty-free benefits of the African Growth and Opportunity Act, or AGOA for short. The first requirement is registration with the United States Food and Drug Administration, or FDA. Under US regulations, any entity or facility that manufactures, processes, packs, labels, holds, or takes possession of food intended for human or animal consumption in the US must register with the FDA. Registration is compulsory and free. It is only a first step and not a permit or approval for you to export your goods. You also need to allow your facility to be inspected by the FDA so it can ensure that food is safe and uncontaminated. Products packed in cans, glass, semi-rigid or flexible pouches require additional documentation as well as registration with a food canning establishment.
So the FDA is the authority that vets all products coming into America to ensure that they are safe and quality controlled to their standard.
I think the most important thing is to be compliant with all the FDA requirements above anything else. Your labeling is one of the most critical things on your packaging because that determines what is inside the jar.
A second crucial requirement pertains to nutrition labeling. The FDA has established comprehensive rules around what information labels must contain and how that information must be shown. For example, nutritional facts must be presented in a certain order using prescribed fonts and font sizes, although you can choose from different formats. It's crucial to comply with the labeling rules, as products that don't may be detained at port. A food labeling guide is available online at fda.gov or follow the link in the AGOA Export User Manual.
Your labels have to be FDA compliant. We need to make sure that the nutritional requirements, spacing and what the look and feel of the label is correct.
You must be able to read what's on the label. And if you don't comply with just the very basics, your consignment will be detained.
Then there are requirements of the Food Safety Modernization Act, which represents the biggest change to US food legislation in 70 years. The Act states that if you manufacture, process, pack, or hold food for consumption in the US, you must write and institute a food safety plan. Without doing this, you may become ineligible to export your goods to the US. You also need to comply with the Foreign Supplier Verification Program, which has requirements for you and the entire supply chain. These requirements are enforced by FDA inspections across the supply chain. It may sound like a lot of work, but it is all necessary to ensure food safety. And it may be worth the effort with the potential for your business's growth and expansion.
So since we've been introduced to the USA Trade and Investment Hub, we've really seen our traction in the US grow. They were absolutely pivotal in helping us get into the first trade show that helped us be successful in the US and have continued to support us. They certainly have been instrumental in allowing us to grow into the US.
Thank you very much, Mamosa. That worked very well. So, how are you feeling? You still want to export to the United States, eh? No, so I think today is all about really unpacking some of that because it can be quite overwhelming, and it's a learning journey. So I think don't feel overwhelmed. Some of our partners that we work with tell us you just have to start somewhere. Start with a food safety plan, or start with something. Work on the labels. It's a process of getting together all the bits and pieces, and it's a learning journey. And I think today will help to put some of that into perspective. What we have planned this afternoon is, first of all, a presentation from Mary Gounder. I think many of you have met her before in the context of the cross-border toolkit training that we did. Mary is a trade specialist, and I'm just running through the program before I hand back to him. Then we have Julio Mpinga from the Malawi Revenue Authority, who is going to talk a bit about the Malawian customs side. How do you get the certificate of origin? He's going to help to understand some of what you need to get right on this end. Then after that, we're going to hear from the Malawi Bureau of Standards from Mr. Paul Konji, and he's going to talk a bit about some of the standards that need to be in place. For everyone who we had a certificate, but food safety, what they said in the video. So if you've got a standard that's audited and in place, you're probably good to go. So just there's a slight nuance there, and maybe Paul can talk to some of that later. Then we'll have a short break, and then we've got a speaker dialing in from the United States from BDP International. He's the Vice President of BDP, looking after government and industry affairs. And import process side. So what happens on the US side? Aside from FDA compliance in the food space, there's also the customs and border protection to understand. We'll touch on a bit of that. And then we had a learning event in Cape Town in March. They visited a few companies in Cape Town that are exporting to the United States, and they are going to share some of the lessons that they learned through the study tour that they went on and through engaging with your peers in countries throughout the region that have had some experience with exporting. And then last of all, Degree the day. So Degree, I think I should hand over to you at this stage to introduce Mary. And as I said, if you have any questions, please feel free to raise your hand if you're in the room or pop it in the chat. We'll definitely make sure that we have enough time to answer your questions and have some discussion. Thanks very much. Degree, back to you.
Thank you. The pot is cooking, yeah, it's coming up. We're now learning about AGOA, and I can see some people itching to go and export to the US. So relax. We're here for, it's quite some time, just so that we get T's and I's checked and crossed so that we're able to master the market. Thank you very much for the video that we have seen. Now, this is the moment you have been waiting for, where we hear experts. This is where the lab, and you really get the nitty-gritties of this market. I would like to introduce Mary Gounder, who's a trade and logistics consultant. As I said, is a consultant who has got more than 18 years experience and how on sales, key human resources with the AP Mora Mask Group, National Customer Service Manager at CMA CGM, and a lecturer in Maritime Studies at the Durban University of Technology. She's a member of the Institute of Directors, Trade Expert, and a fellow of the Institute of Chartered Shipbrokers. She holds a Master's of Commerce degree from the University of KwaZulu-Natal and a PQE from the Institute of Chartered Shipbrokers. In her current role as an independent consultant, Mary works with development agencies and companies to provide logistics, trade facilitation, and value chain solutions. Mary is passionate about promoting gender equality in the international trade sector. So welcome, Mary, and please take us through your presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doug, and thank you, Francis. And thank you to the USA Trade Hub for inviting me to speak today. I will share my screen. Okay, I hope you can all hear me clearly. So today, I think a lot of you, as Francis may have mentioned, that some of you are aware of who I am, and you've seen some of my presentations on the cross-border toolkit. But today I'll be speaking on the export procedures to the United States and looking at AGOA. Okay, so my presentation outline for today, we'll just do a brief outline on AGOA, which I think from the videos, you don't need to know that much more. And we'll look at the export processes, import processes, and some of the import requirements for the US market. And we'll briefly go over Incoterms and payment methods and some of the next steps you can look at from a business perspective. Now, AGOA is the African Growth and Opportunity Act, which was enacted in the year 2000. And it's given an opportunity to countries within the sub-Saharan African region to be able to export to the US, which is obviously a much bigger market than you'd find within the continent. And there's a lot more opportunity to find buyers. So as much as there's a lot of requirements and there's a lot of certifications that you may need depending on the product you want to export, there's a huge market out there, which the USA Trade Hub has been helping businesses to find customers to be able to be listed on the Amazon website. So there's a lot of things that's happening. And I think what the important thing today is to understand, what are the processes and what do you need to understand about AGOA? Because, with all trade agreements, between different countries, the main thing is, as a business, how can you use it to benefit your company, to increase sales of your products, and to take your products to the next level? So you've got the AGOA, which has a broad provision for over 6,400 products. And then you've got a narrow provision, which is mainly on the apparel and textile coverage. So it's basically being able to import textiles from different African countries. And, you've got duty-free, you've got quota-free for all the listed products that's included in the AGOA trade agreement, right? There are some excluded products which you need to be aware of, and it is certain meat products. You've got dairy products that may be excluded, sugar, chocolate, peanuts, prepared food products, tobacco, and other agricultural goods. Now, there is a link on the AGOA a guide on the USA Trade Hub website, where you can actually check your HTS code or your customs code to check whether or not your goods would be accepted in the US under AGOA. If it's not accepted under AGOA, then you'll have to look at, you would pay normal customs duties for this. So it will not be duty free. So it's important to understand what your HTS code is and to know what your product is and whether it is acceptable. And most products are acceptable, but then you'd have to look at your certifications. Okay. So the next part is looking at the international supply chain model. Now, this would go with almost any export that you do to any country. Okay. So the first thing as an exporter, you'd need to prepare your goods for export, establish the contract with the buyer who will be ordering the goods. And from your side, under the commercial procedures, you will have to advise on delivery, request on payment, and so on. So there's a lot of things that happen simultaneously when you are exporting. And I think it's important to understand the different procedures because you will have commercial procedures, you'll have transport procedures, you'll have regulatory procedures and financial procedures. And a lot of these things happen at the same time. And it does get a bit complicated. So it's good to understand, okay, this is the product I'm selling. This is what I need to do from my side as an exporter. So I will need to make sure that the goods are packaged accordingly, that it's labeled properly, that we've arranged the transport, that all the regulatory procedures from my side is done. So if I need to make sure that my goods need to have specific licenses or certifications, I need to do that. And this is where you need to actually be communicating with the buyer as well, because they will be more aware of what the procedures are for importing into the US. Some of them may already be registered to import certain things. And a lot of the times you can pre-register as an importer for a specific product. So they'll be aware of these procedures. They'll know what the process is for you to be able to export to them, right? But the main thing is that you also need to understand as early as possible what needs to be done from your side. That way, your importer doesn't face any issues with getting the goods released in the US. And then obviously you would have your financial procedures where you are looking at how payment is made, whether or not you need export risk credit, how you'll actually be paid, when you'll be paid, and that sort of thing. So, if you look at the commercial procedures, you're looking at, ensuring that your contract with the buyer is established. And within that contract, you need to look at what Incoterms you're selecting. You'll also need to look at what payment methods need to be that you agree with and how you want to be paid. Because remember, especially as a growing business or a business that has already been selling a specific product within Malawi, now you want to export, you need to remember that your payment is not going to be as quick as if you are selling to a local buyer. If you're selling to a local buyer, you almost get your payment almost immediately, unless you've agreed that they can pay in 7 days or 30 days or whatever your agreement is. But when it comes to international shipments, you need to look at how long does it take the goods to get to the US, what sort of transport method you're using. Is it going to be air freight? Is it going to be sea freight? Is it going to be a combination of these things? Because you will need to look at, how long does it take to get to the US? When will you, because will you get your payment when you've actually had it loaded onto a ship, depending on where that ship is going to be leaving from? So you will have road haul or rail till it gets to the ship. Then you'll have it on the ship for maybe 30 days or longer. And then once it gets to the US, it may be about almost 2 months later when it arrives in the US, if it's going by a ship. So are you going to be paid only when it's going to be delivered? So these are all things that you need to consider. You need to think about. So the processes, especially when you first start off, it can be very, very long and tedious. There's a lot of documentation you need to have. And prior to exporting to the US, you do need permission and for the customs border, the customs organization to ensure that they will allow that specific product into the country. So normally, if you are booking with a shipping line or a logistics company, they will send it, your HS code to the importing country, to the US, and they'll have agencies there to say, do they agree to accept those goods? Because you do need permission before any of these goods are accepted into the US. So no matter what it is, unless you've got pre-authorization to export to the US, or your importer has pre-authorization to import that specific product. So these are challenges you will need to be aware of. But just remember, in the long run, it will be worth going through those months of dealing with getting your certifications and permissions and all of that. Because as I've said before, it is a much bigger market that you'll be entering, and you'll have a lot more buyers there than you would have locally. And it's also about getting businesses to another level where there's more security, because if you are only looking at your local or domestic market, if things don't go well in the economy locally, your business goes down. So, but if you have approached the export markets, then you actually have options for selling your products elsewhere and making a lot more money. So even if the economy in Malawi at a certain period is not doing well, you still have income coming in from your exports. Okay, so that is why exporting to countries like the US is so important, because you need to make sure that there is money always coming into the economy, right? So it helps businesses actually remain sustainable. So yes, it might be costly getting the certifications. It may take time, but with the right support, and I think the USA Trade Up does provide quite a bit of the support, you will be able to get to that level where you can export to the US. Okay, so your export process, you start off with, getting a quote request from the importer or from a potential buyer. And you need to know what to include in the quote. And obviously you have to have a full description of whatever goods that you're selling to them, the quantity, the quality, whatever certifications you may need. So there's a lot of important information. And one of those things would also be the HS code. So they can also check, and you can check whether it's included in the in AGOA, and whether or not it's included as accepted goods that can be imported into the US, and whether that your importer can get permission in advance for it. So you need to supply your buyer with as much information as possible. The other thing to look at when you're doing an export quote is to make sure that you have a time limit on your quote. So you will have a validity period of, let's just say, 7 days or 30 days. Because remember, things change all the time, and the cost for actually producing your goods may even change. So it's important to make sure that there is a validity date on your export quote. Then you'll have to look at your clearing and forwarding agent. How do you select the service from, or your service provider? And here it's very important that you find a service provider who has agents in the US. So that way you can have your tracking done, you will have good communication with them, and there'll be less hassle. So you must be able to actually go onto their website and be able to track where your shipment is. And your importer must also be able to track where the shipment is. Because sometimes we may want to use local clearing and forwarding agents, which is great. They do need the business. But ultimately, you need to also be able to provide the importer in the US with as much information as possible. And if there's any delays with the shipments, you need to know it in advance. So it's very important when you choose your clearing and forwarding agent. It's not just about how much you're paying for their service. It's about what does their service encompass. You know, what kind of tracking system can they offer you? What kind of support can they offer you, and so on. Your pro forma invoice will include very similar information to your export quote, unless there's any major changes with what your buyer actually wants. So your pro forma invoice and your export quote will have very, very similar information. The documents almost look the same. And when you're processing your export order, you're looking at making sure that the order is prepared according to the stipulated requirements. So if your buyer has ordered 100 blue t-shirts and V-neck men's t-shirts in size small to large with specific numbers, that's exactly what you're supposed to be sending them. So you need to be very, very clear about what the requirements are. And if you don't understand what the requirements are, please always go back to the buyer and, you know, check before you prepare the order, and check that you are getting the order correct at all times. During this time, you'll be preparing the shipping documents, and this will include your packing list, your commercial invoice, and any other certifications that you need, the transport bill of lading, and so on. Because all of these documents will need to go to the importer so they can release the goods once it arrives there. And you'll also be making arrangements with the clearing and forwarding agent at this time. So while you're processing and getting the order ready, you're doing a whole lot of things. So you need to make sure that there is attention to detail, especially with the documents that you're preparing. So as I've stated, the documentation will include your commercial invoice, your packing list, transport waybill, your exchange control forms, and any permits that you may need. And you will, in most likelihood, need to present documents to the bank if you have a letter of credit involved in this shipment. So your documents will always be important. You have to get it correct at all times, and make sure that whoever is getting the documents ready has a very, very high attention to detail, because you cannot even have sometimes, you know, spelling errors on a document. You know, if you present documents to a bank and you've got spelling errors on it, they will send it back to you, and you'll have to go and spend more money correcting it, and you will not be paid until those documents are correct. So rather make sure everything's done correctly right at the beginning. And the last part of the export process is the after-sales service. So once your goods have been delivered, it's very important to, you know, go back to the buyer and check whether they're happy with the goods, or if there's anything that you could have done differently. because a lot of the times you'll deal with clients who may not complain, but they may also not come back to you because they weren't really happy with the service. So it's important to always check whether your buyer, whether it's a local buyer or an overseas buyer, are they happy with your product? Are they happy with the service, and so on? Okay. On the import side, the buyer will have to make sure that they have registered for as an importer. They should have their own clearing and forwarding agent, and this will all depend on the Incoterms that you have chosen. We will touch on Incoterms in a little while. They will also have to make sure that they do their import clearance and ensure that if there's any customs duties payable, that it is paid, or VAT, and the correct HS codes are used, because if you use incorrect HS codes, you may not be exempt from customs duties. So it's very important to check that your HS codes are used correctly, and you've checked that it does fall under AGOA, and it is duty free. So the documentation they will need to receive from you is the commercial invoice, packing list, transport waybill, and they'll have to do their own exchange control forms, and they will have to have their own permits as well. A lot of the times, especially new shipments, may be stopped for inspection. So this can delay the shipment. So there'll be additional costs of storage. There might be fines involved if you're not meeting the requirements. And this happens in any country that you're where we import into. So it's always important to make sure that you are meeting whatever requirements you need, right? And then obviously the import permits, which they will need to arrange. Some of the import requirements for the US market, and this is dependent on the product that you're exporting to them. So the importer will need to be aware of whatever the processes are for importing. So they may need FDA approval, which is the US Food and Drug Administration. APHIS is Animal Plant Health Inspection Service. I mean, they can actually get their permits online on the APHIS website. So if they're aware of all the processes, then it makes it a lot easier. Then you've got US Customs and Border Protection. So it's very important that they are aware that these goods are arriving in the US. Normally you have to, whichever shipping line is taking the goods, or airline, or even a logistics company, they need to report to Customs and Border Protection that this is what is coming into the US. And normally this is at the booking stage. So when you book with a logistics company, they need to make sure that they are getting permission already at that stage. Okay. Then you've got your harmonized tariff system or schedule, where you've got your HS code or customs code. It's important to check on their website what the requirements are. So when you go on to the link that's on the AGOA guide, you will find that it will tell you what you need and what import requirements are required for your specific goods that you are sending. CITES is the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora. This is where you are, if you are exporting things like cosmetics or anything to do with any endangered flora or fauna. If it's not on the endangered list, you'll need to provide, or even if it is, you still need to provide a CITES certificate to say that the government of Malawi is allowing the export of a specific product. Okay. Then you've got your HACCP, your hazard analysis and critical control point. This is for food products. So there are requirements that you would need to get certification for this. Then you've got your US Environmental Protection Agency. So there's a lot of different import requirements. I know this might actually be putting you off exporting to the US, but please remember your importer will most likely be aware of what the requirements are. It's just that you may need to make sure that you are meeting the requirements on your side, and you have the right certifications and so on. Okay. So moving on to Incoterms. So once you have a potential buyer and they are happy with your quote, you obviously need to figure out who needs to do what for the shipment. So who needs to book for the shipping line, who needs to arrange the transport, who arranges for the insurance of the cargo while it's being, or while it is in transit to the US, because almost anything can go wrong. I mean, ships sink quite often these days, unfortunately. There are accidents on the road, you have delays with the rail. So there's a lot of issues that you need to take into consideration. So insurance is very important, and it's very important to know who's paying for what costs. Okay, so your Incoterms deal with who does what risks are associated with it, and who pays for the insurance, okay, at any given point, and the actual cost. So remember, if you are an exporter and you're still new to exporting, your shipping cost, I mean, just shipping freight alone can go up to almost like $10,000 for one container. And those are the prices that we've seen recently in international trade. So you need to be aware of whether or not you can afford it and choose your Incoterms based on, what are you able to do as a business? Can you afford to pay for the insurance? Can you afford to pay for the freight on the ship or the air freight? So all of these things you need to think about before choosing your Incoterm. So Incoterms actually makes it easier for you to discuss it with your buyer to say, okay, can you actually pick up at my warehouse? I'll get the goods ready, I'll have it packaged, but can you get a clearing and folding agent to pick it up and then obviously deliver it to the US to yourself? So this can be done, but you have to select the right Incoterm. So we've got Incoterms for 2010, we've got Incoterms 2000, we've got Incoterms for 2020. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly go over Incoterms 2010 and 2020, just so you have an idea. So it's just going to be like a quick recap. Incoterms is a bit complicated to understand when you first use it, but mainly it's just about you as a seller deciding on what you can do. So if you choose an Incoterm like X works, here the seller, you as a seller, all you have to do is just make sure that the goods are ready and packaged, right? And they're at your warehouse, and the buyer who is here in red, they send a clearing folding agent or a transport company to pick up from you. For free carrier, you package it and you make sure that it goes to the carrier or it's delivered to the carrier. So all the risk up until you deliver it to the carrier is for you. Sorry. So you'll have to make sure you're paying for the cost and you are paying for the insurance up until it's delivered to the carrier. So each Incoterm has a different responsibilities. Okay, so for carriage paid to, you will pay all the costs in green here to destination, but you will deliver and you'll pay for the insurance up until it goes to the first carrier. So in this way, it's a bit more complicated. So when you're new to exporting, I suggest you go for the simple Incoterms. So like things like X Works and free carrier, or if it's going via sea, you can choose FOB or free alongside ship. So once it gets onto the ship, then it is the buyer's responsibility. So these are things that you can look at and choose from there. If you obviously are experienced with exporting and if you're experienced with the US market, then yes, you can go ahead and choose something like delivered at terminal where you deliver to the destination terminal, and then it's less responsibility for the buyer, okay? So depending on the amount of experience you have and the amount of finance you have, you can actually go for the more complicated Incoterms. But if you're still new to it, I suggest you go for the simplest and let them take control within Malawi itself. So if you have a buyer in the US, they can obviously get a clearing and forwarding agent, an international one, to pick up from you and control the transport. So that's why Incoterms are so important, because if you understand it, you can use it to your advantage, okay? So that's Incoterms 2010, and then you've got Incoterms 2020. So here as well, it's very similar. You just need to know you as an exporter. For Xworks, it's the same, right? You get the goods ready and the buyer picks it up, right? And they pay for all the costs and the risks. And remember, whatever you are responsible for as an exporter, you need to include these costs in your quote. You need to include it in your commercial invoice, because if you are paying for transport, you need to be able to get that money back, okay? So on your quote or on your commercial invoice, you will be stating the Incoterm that's being used. So you will say, okay, it is X works from your warehouse in Malawi, or it's a free carrier in Lilongwe, or it is delivered at place in the US, okay? So depending on what Incoterm you're using, you're going to have different costs and different risks. So please be aware of it. You know, if you want to understand it a lot more and how to use it, you can go onto the SATI-Hub website and download the cross-border toolkit, where I have it explained in a lot more detail. And we do have a tool on that for you to use the Incoterms itself, right, with a full explanation on who does what. So you've got your sea and waterway transport Incoterms again here. So here you literally have to get the goods to the port alongside a ship. On FOB free on board, you need to have it delivered onto the ship itself, right? So you need to understand where does your responsibility end, what do you need to do, and how much it actually will cost you to do all of this. So before you even quote, please check with your buyer what sort of Incoterm they would want. And you can also look at what you can do and negotiate on that Incoterm. You don't always have to agree to the Incoterm that the buyer wants, okay? Okay, so before I finish up, we'll just quickly go through the different payment methods. So you've got 4 main payment methods for international trade. Yes, we do have things like PayPal and all of that, but it will all fall under, you know, cash in advance, letters of credit, documentary credit, or open account, right? So your payment methods would literally just tell you when you get paid. So cash in advance is where you are paid when you quote the person or when you have the goods ready for them to pick up. So here you're paying before, you are being paid before they get the goods. So for you as a seller, this is the most secure form, where somebody orders and you say, okay, I need payment up front. Okay, so the buyer may prepay the entire shipment or part of it, or you could say, I need a 50% deposit. So there you'll actually look at, okay, they'll pay you a 50% deposit. You could use that money to actually get the goods ready. And then once it's delivered, they pay you the other 50%. Then you've got the letter of credit, where you get the banks involved, and you'll have to present your documents to the bank once the goods have been loaded onto a vessel, or once your logistics company has provided you with your transport waiver. This is a little more complicated, but it is the safest way of getting your money, because here all you have to do is provide the documents once the goods have been moved, and the bank already has the money in their account to pay you. It is a bit of a longer process, and I'm not going to go into too much detail with this because it will take some time. So literally, it's just your buyer goes to the bank and says they want to open a letter of credit. Their bank contacts your bank in Malawi, and then to verify whether you actually exist. And once it's been established what you're selling and all the documents that you need, they will make sure that they hold the money from the buyer. Okay, so if the buyer is purchasing from you for $50,000, their bank will hold the money until they get the documents. Once they get the documents, they'll pay your bank and your bank pays you. Then you've got the documentary credit. It's similar to the letter of credit, but it doesn't have as much security. Here, the bank is literally just like a post office. You know, you send the documents and then they send the payment. Whereas in the letter of credit, the banks make sure that all the documents are correct, and they make sure that they secure that payment for you as they set up. Then you've got your open account where, you know, you send the goods to the buyer, you send the documents, and then you tell them, okay, you pay when you receive the documents or you pay when you receive the goods, right? This is if you've got a really good relationship with them, because this is sort of like giving them credit, really. And can you afford to give that credit? As a new business, you may not be able to afford it, so I wouldn't advise that. I would always say, if you are new to exporting, at least get a deposit in advance, so you know that the buyer is legit, a legitimate buyer, and you know that you have some sort of payment. Because if you sell products to the amount of $50,000 or $10,000 even, and you are still a new business, you know, your business may end up closing down because of that one order. So always try and get a deposit or work via a letter of credit. Okay, so payment methods as well. If you want more details on it, please have a look at the toolkit. And your next steps, please understand the process that needs to be followed for your specific commodity. Also, make sure that you understand what packaging is required, what labeling is required. All of these things are very, very important. Okay, build relationships with key role players and stakeholders. So this could be your, you know, organizations like the USA Trade Up, you know, and different organizations that help build your business within Malawi for export. So the USA Trade Up partners, work with them, attend relevant meetings, these kinds of meetings where you get more information, where you can network with other exporters, learn from them, and so on. And also attend if there's any buyer opportunities where you can, even if you don't have a product ready, attend these meetings so you understand what the buyers require, so you can get your products ready to a specific level that you need to for exporting. Always try and find as much information as possible. One important thing is to focus on your core business. So your core business is your product. Always understand that that is what you're about. You need to develop your product, you need to package it, you need to make sure that you are getting it at the right quality or producing it at the right quality for export. So things like logistics, things like transport, you can always delegate it to other people. So whatever you can get the help, get it, but always focus on your product itself and how you can get it export ready. The other thing is to invest time and money in building your export business, and it does take a lot of money. It takes money to get your certifications in order, it takes money to upgrade your production, to make sure you've got the right processes in order, to get your ISO compliance. All of that takes a lot of time and money. So you need to be ready to invest in that, but also make sure that your domestic business, whatever you're selling domestically or locally, make sure you're making as much money from that as well, because that is the money that you can use to reinvest, for your exporting, right? Because it's very hard to get funding for exporting, or in general, getting funding for businesses is hard unless you're actually willing to put enough money in it yourself, right? So always make sure that you are looking at how you can use your money to build your business further. So that's it, make sure whatever product you are selling, you are ready to, and it is at the right quality, but start somewhere. If you get a quote request, or if you get some sort of query from a potential buyer, just go with it and see how far you can take it. Because a lot of times you may fail, and then eventually you get to the level where, okay, there is some sort of breakthrough where you've got the money, you've got the buyer, and everything works out. But it takes those, a certain amount of effort to get there. So there is information out there, there is support out there, but ultimately it does take a lot of work. So that is it from me. Thank you very much. These are my details if you'd like to get in touch with me. So I'll hand over back to the SA Trader. Thank you. Sorry, Doug, you are muted.
Me now.
Yes. Can you?
Okay, great. So if we're muted, hopefully you saw our team clapping from here. Blantyre, can we hear from you? Are you still there? How was the presentation from your end? Another round of applause from your end, Blantyre. Blantyre, please unmute and clap. Okay, great. So we'll move on. Thank you, Maggie. I took a few notes and a few pointers from your presentation in terms of what the exporters need to really get grounded on as they export to the US. Thank you very much for the wonderful information on the US import requirements. I think what was key there is that every exporter, they need to really know their commodity and the requirements for that commodity in the market. So the requirements are market specific, and they're also commodity specific, but most of those requirements are cut across the products, especially the food products. The import requirements are very stringent, but very doable. We have seen other companies managing those requirements and being able to export. And also thank you for highlighting the different obligations and risks. Sometimes when we look at trade, we kind of have a tunnel vision of having all the benefits and ignoring all the risks and also the obligations on our part as exporters. So thank you very much for this information on the obligations and risks, especially being aware of the different Incoterms. Yeah, we've heard a lot about XWEX. What's the price XWEX? And sometimes people, they quote for FOB. So please be aware of which Incoterms are you quoting. Are you quoting for FOB, DAP, or free carrier? So those are very important. That's very important information for exporters, but also the payment methods that you have highlighted. It's very important to know which method are you going to follow, and how are you going to have the money paid from your buyer to your country. So those are that's very important information, and thank you once again. Now we go to the next. We just want to take some questions, and if there are questions from the group, we're going to take questions both physically here and online, as well as our colleagues in Blantyre. we have the mics in the room, and we'll pass on the mic just to make sure that we are able to get the questions. But also our colleagues online, I would want to start with you. Please raise a hand, and then you'll be asked to unmute, and then you can ask your question. Please formulate those questions. I hope you were taking notes and you have those questions ready. Okay, great. We have the first question here. Go ahead. Introduce yourself once again, and then proceed with the question.
Thank you so much. My name is Shaneva Jamba. I'm the co-founder and director of Maite Processors Company Limited. So I'm interested with the AGOA window. Honestly, this is my first physical encounter with the AGOA, but I've read volumes of AGOA online. So I take this as an opportunity. My first question, I think it applies generally to both speakers. I would want to know if locally we've got the advisory, inspectorate and certification services for both the technical and the finance side. If we've got the services available in Malawi. I've seen lots of the technical and financial, services that we need to comply to. I'm not sure if the services are readily available locally. Secondly, to learn the product, exporting from Malawi to the US. What is the whole, cycle for you to for the transaction to be completed? Again, in case we don't have doesn't have the agent in the US, or we don't have the ready market in the US, what is the procedure in case I missed it in the presentation? An exporter doesn't have a ready market in the US, and we don't have probably the agent in the US. What are the necessary steps to be taken for us to access the AGOA market? Thank you, and over.
Thank you. Any other question? Okay, great. Let me just check in with Mary to see if you clearly got that question before we proceed to take another question.
Doug, I think the first question is for someone local in Malawi who can listen, because I wouldn't be able to advise on the services for the certifications that's available in Malawi. The second for the cycle for the product, yes, I did get that question. But I think also the USA Trade Hub can assist with the second part of the question on, I think, more the support if you do not have a buyer in the US or agent in the US.
Great, thank you. Maybe just to quickly take a quick stab on that. I think the most important thing is to know that trade is one of the focal activities for development activities for any country, and Malawi, as a country that focuses on exporting and developing trade, has got so many institutions that can assist in terms of understanding the export procedures. Yes, as the USA Trade Hub, we are one of the projects and the partners in this export drive. However, there are so many industry actors, starting with your trade associations. In the whatever industry you are operating, there are business member organizations, voluntary organizations which you can join and be a member from there, where most of the information on trade and other related services is distributed. For instance, we have Mr. Mware here from the National Association for Small and Medium Enterprises, and they are collaborating with a number of agencies that are involved in trade and also business development to be able to pass on that information. But also beyond that, we have the Chambers of Commerce and Industry that are very instrumental in that. Beyond that, as we said earlier when we started this session, this function itself has been organized by the AGOA National Steering Committee, which comprises different private sector and government institutions that are focused on promoting sustainable utilization of AGOA opportunities. That's why if you see on the program, we have the Ministry of Trade, we have the MITC, Malawi Investment and Trade Center, we have the Malawi Revenue Authority, we also have the Malawi Bureau of Standards. So all this is the ecosystem that is available to the trade dispensation and also to enable exporters to be able to overcome the barriers and requirements to various markets, so including the AGOA. And also, thank you very much, Mary, in your presentation. You indicated the AGOA toolkit. We have the resources on the USA Trade Hub website. If you check on the folders that you received, there's a website address at the back, and if you go to the resources on that website, you have a ton of information, including information on the exporting to the US using the AGOA, and also there is an AGOA toolkit there. And also all those videos that you saw here, they are on that website. Please do access them, and you'll find that there is a ton of information that you can utilize. Does that address your question? Great. Blantyre, do you have any questions? There are hands here in Lilongwe. They have questions, but I want to check with you, Blantyre, just to make sure that we are together. Okay.
There's one question online. It is, who funds the FDA inspections?
Did you get that question, Mary? Mary?
Yes, I'm on and I'm checking it. Thanks.
Great. As you're checking that question, colleagues, Blantyre online. Okay, we have another question here. Over to you. Thank you.
Yeah, hello, my name is Dora. I just have a question. Do we have a success story, maybe someone from Malawi, small and medium enterprise, who has successfully followed all these procedures you're telling us and is indeed exporting to USA? Maybe you can share one success story. Thank you.
Okay, in fact, that's a suggestion. It's not a question. So yeah, yeah, we're happy to share success stories. We have, unfortunately, we didn't prepare for this, but we have some of the people in the room that have been to the US, have experienced this real time, and also have engaged with importers in the US and facilitators there. So try to link you up because we didn't get their consent. We'll not put them on the spot, but we'll link up during the break. Please follow me so that I can make some introductions and you collaborate and discuss how that can be done. But yes, for our colleagues online and others in Blantyre, we do have a lot of exports from Malawi. In fact, Malawi, the US is one of the top export markets for Malawi. So we do have exporters from Malawi, both small and large, that are exporting different products to the USA. And definitely we can share those experiences and those stories. And also if you go on the website, you'll find some of the success stories, and you can be able to relate to what is happening in Malawi. And definitely there is successes from Malawi exporting to the US. Blantyre, I still want to believe that we are together. No questions from Blantyre. Great. Online, any further questions before I invite Mary just to respond to the question that was posed earlier? Great. Over to you, Mary.
Okay. Thank you, Doug. I hope I can answer these, correctly. I think with regard to the cycle for the product itself, you obviously need to look at your product development and the quality, and then obviously moving on to packaging and labeling of your packaging and the shipment itself. So the whole process, the cycle for actually exporting your product to the US may take months, especially getting it ready right to the beginning and making sure that your product is developed to the quality, to the standards that's required. Because remember, the standards that may be acceptable within Malawi may not be the standards that's acceptable in the US. And also remember that you're competing with other African countries and with other countries worldwide. So you may have a specialty product, but that specialty product may also be available. We'd have exporters in South Africa that could be sending it. You could have exporters in South America that could be sending it. So always remember that you are competing on an international basis. So your product needs to be at an international level. So I think that would be the longest part, getting it to that level, and making sure that you are meeting whatever requirements. And this is where things like samples come in, where if you can send samples to the buyer so they can check it, then that helps, because then they can check the packaging and so on, whether it will actually be at the standard where you can put it in a store in the US, right? Unless, of course, you are sending things in bulk, but ultimately you do need to send samples, and they need to understand what products they're getting, especially when it comes to foodstuff as well. So the cycle itself is quite long right at the beginning. It's just going to go on for months and months until you get it right. And then once you get that product right and it's packaged right, it's labeled properly, the cycle becomes a lot shorter, because then you already have everything in place. If somebody orders, you can do it within a month or two and get it delivered on time and so on. But really, right when you first starting off, it will take a long time to get it to that level. So I hope that answers that question. With regard to the FDA inspections, there are inspections at the origin country. So there will be, there might be agents for the FDA in Malawi, so that you'll need to actually research to see if they are actual agents. So they will come to your premises and they will look at the processes, or they'll look at the type of equipment that you're using and so on. The premises that you're in, and they will inspect different aspects of your production, depending on the type of product you're sending, right? And then you've got inspections when it arrives in the US. So the inspections in Malawi will most likely have to be paid by you, because you are making sure that you are in line with FDA requirements. And once you get that certification, it's a lot easier to export to the US, right? So FDA inspections in the US itself would obviously have to be paid by the buyer, but that again is also dependent on the Incoterm itself. So I hope that helps answer those questions. Okay, Doug, is there anything else?
Thanks, Mary. It's Francis here. I just wanted to add to what you said. I think just to expand on the FDA versus Customs and Border Protection part, we've had a couple of presentations from the CBP attaché to Southern Africa. And what he emphasizes in terms of Customs and Border Protection is sending the information ahead, as Mary already mentioned, but also that if you're a first-time exporter to the United States, they don't know who you are, they don't have data about you. So what they need to do is they basically need to learn about your business and your product. And there's certain things that will put a red flag. If it's a risky product, based on other imports they've had, if it's a risky country where there's importation of illegal immigrants, according to their flags, then there's a higher likelihood that you're going to get inspected. But basically what he says is that your goods will be inspected the first time because they don't know you. There's different types of inspections that they'll do of your goods when they go through customs. It could be just an x-ray. They could actually physically open everything up, damage the products because they need to see what's in the bags. So it's not great, but it's the reality. So all that we can suggest is that you anticipate that because that takes time. It's at your cost. You can lose some of your products. So you need to plan for the amount of time it's going to take, the cost of stuff sitting there at your expense. If you don't expect that, then it's going to be painful. If you expect it, at least you can plan. Then also just in terms of the duration of the export process, I think what Mary touched on very well is that, getting ready, getting your labels ready, getting your product ready, and then obviously the shipping. But in addition to that, your buyers will have payment terms. So if you're thinking of your cash flow cycle, it's very long. We know from other case studies that it can be a 90-day or a 60-day payment from the buyer. So even once this gets there, it doesn't always mean that you'll be paid straight away. So those you really need to plan for a long cash flow cycle and have sufficient cash to cope with that. And I think when you negotiate and when you use the INCO terms, try and use them as best as you can, as knowledgeably as you can, to negotiate terms that you can handle because they're long. Also, what we're seeing is that because of different market forces, the shipping costs are extremely expensive at the moment. So you need to really budget very carefully around your shipping costs because of the lack of shipping containers in the Southern Hemisphere. There's so many global forces that are playing in that space. So be aware that your shipping costs are expensive and that they could escalate. So if you're negotiating pricing, maybe consider that there could be an increase and make your buyer aware of that as well so that you don't have to carry that cost if the shipping costs change. So those would be my additions. Thanks, Doug.
Hey, thank you. So thank you very much, Francis, and thank you very much, Mary, on that presentation. Once again, checking if there are any questions. Okay, there's one question here.
Yeah, my question is on if you look at most of the businesses that we have, they are small, or I would call maybe medium size, a few of them. Are there any efforts to aggregate the produce from these small enterprises by the importers so that they can be able to enjoy economies of scale and also be able to unlock the market that is there? Are there any efforts for aggregation of produce from these small enterprises? Because that's what I'm seeing.
Thank you. Did you get that question, Mary? Of course, I know it's for us, the locals and the facilitators here. In terms of aggregation, in order to unlock the market potential for small and medium enterprises. Do you have examples, or should I go ahead and give some of the local examples? Thank you.
Doug, I think when it comes to looking at economies of scale and looking at the smaller producers, this has to be done in Malawi itself, where you get a group of companies coming together and putting together their produce and making sure everyone is at the right quality and producing, according to export standards. Because a buyer will not necessarily want to, handle all of that. So yes, there may be 10 producers of a specific product, but the buyer is not going to come in and say, okay, this number companies needs to be put together because they are the right quality. So I think it's something that has to be done within the country where you create your own associations and then you look at it from there to say, okay, well, this is coffee or whatever product you're looking at, and it's done at origin or within Malawi itself, the exporting country, because buyers don't want to deal with the long processes. They literally want your product to be ready for export. They're not interested in the backstory and how we get to that point. So I think it's an investment from within the country to say, okay, this is a product we want to export to the US. So this is what we will do. We will assess all the producers. We will check their qualities and, move it from there and look at who can actually be combined and export it together and then enjoy that economies of scale. And yes, that will be needed because, the demand from first world countries is much higher. So sometimes the small producers may not be able to produce the right volume. So I think it has to be done within the country itself, within Malawi itself. You won't find buyers who are going to be really interested in getting involved at this level. Well, from my opinion.
Thank you, Mary, and thank you so much, colleagues. Yes, I think it's very important to make sure that you achieve the various aspects of export. Quantity is one of them, and definitely the economies of scale can be achieved by working together. At this point, we'll proceed with the program. There is, at the end, we have a networking session where we can take on more questions and we can also interact and engage. So in the interest of time, as we are going towards the tea break coming up at the top of the hour, we are going to have a presentation from Malawi Bureau of Standards. Malawi Bureau of Standards is one of the facilitators for trade, and we have Mr. Paul Konje, who is the Quality Monitoring Officer from Malawi Bureau of Standards that will take us through the next presentation. Just wanted to check with Paul. Are you ready? Okay, Paul. And please bring up the slides for Paul. Yes, Blantyre, please spotlight, give the mic to Paul. So Paul is, as I said, is in charge, is the Quality Monitoring Officer at the Malawi Bureau of Standards, and is in charge of preparation of work plans, budgets, and progress reports for the Imports Quality Monitoring Scheme. And he is also responsible for conducting inspections for imports and other industrial inspections in accordance with Malawi standards. So you see that usually the laws for imports and laws are for the exports, usually they are the same. So Paul is the person that is directly involved in the ensuring that the adherence to Malawi imports regulations and also the various import regulations that we share with us. Over to you, Paul. Let me check if you are now able to come online. Okay, over to you.
Hello, 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 hello. you hear me? Oh.
Can you hear?
Yes, 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 yes.
Okay. I think we Blantyre team lady, and since we have another presentation coming up, data is traveling. We just want to make sure that we are able to cut time. We use this time for table Blantyre create transmission.
Hello.
Hello, Nelly.
Maybe he will just use our computer and he can talk through the presentation.
Okay. The suggestion is we break for tea and then let's regroup as soon as we establish the connection.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Okay, colleagues, tea is for Lilongwe, tea is just outside as you're coming in at the steps. Please let's grab tea, coffee, water, some snack, and then regroup here by we have to 4 o'clock, so let's try to come as quick as we can, please. Thank you.
Hi, Blantyre team. Can we try and get sound check to work quickly? Butchilo, can you hear me? Hi, I hear a faint voice. Can we do a sound check to try and get this to work?
Hi, Francis. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Okay, perfect.
Are you on your laptop or are you on the venue's microphone?
On my laptop, but we're trying the venue now.
Okay,
please go ahead.
perfect.
Please go ahead.
Francis. Hi, Francis.
Okay.
Hello, Francis. Hello.
How would you like?
She's now muted.
Always in the venue, so you're going to have to speak quite loudly.
Yeah,
Receiving any sound.
you are not receiving. Even
I am.
I.
Okay, maybe. Please try calling again.
Guys, I can't hear you. If you're talking to us, you're going to have
Francis.
Yeah.
Hi, Francis.
Could you maybe stand at the podium so that I can see you? It might help.
Are you able to hear me? Hello.
Hi, Nelly.
Yes, can you hear me?
I can hear you fine, and it seems to be working. So has something
Yes.
changed? Did they change some setup? Because it seems perfect now.
They were just changing a few things. So I think now can be able to have.
Okay. And Mr. Konje, Paul, is it
After
possible
tea.
for us to accommodate Mr. Michael Ford at 4 o'clock, and then we will do you after him, just immediately after Michael? Is that possible? Can you hear me, Nelly?
Now I can hear you.
Hey, guys.
Hello.
Nelly, what I'm asking is, can we do Michael's presentation at 4? Because he's traveling and I think he's a bit time sensitive. And then we can do all after Michael. Is it fine? Okay, the sound seems to be working. Let me talk to you on WhatsApp. Good morning, Michael. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you. Good day.
Fantastic. It's a little noisy in the venue at the moment because it's our tea break, but I thought it might be good just to have you share your slides and do a quick sound and video check. So I can see you nicely. I can hear you nicely.
Okay. And can you see my slides at the moment?
100%.
Okay. Yeah. The only thing as I would do is just do this.
Sorry, guys. I'm just trying to do a sound check in here. If you wouldn't mind just lowering your voices a little bit. Frank. Okay. Just trying to do a sound check in here, and it's a bit difficult to hear. So thank you. All right. Michael, please go ahead.
No, it's okay. Let me see here.
Okay, I think we're good. We can see you, we can hear you, and your slides are sharing perfectly.
Is that good?
That's 100% perfect.
Okay. You just let me know whenever you want me to begin. I'm here.
Okay, great. We'll just share an introductory slide, and then we'll ask you to reshare your slides at the session. So it'll be in about a quarter of an hour at 10 o'clock your time.
Okay, very good.
Lovely. Thank you. See you later.
You're welcome.
One T.
We tell the untold stories of Mother Africa.
Come back.
We are the protectors of the land. Powerful people. We are the protectors of the land.
One, two. 1, 2.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back. Can everyone in the room, if you are on the link, if you could please make sure you mute, because we're getting a bit of feedback. It seems to be sorted now. Blantyre team, can you give us the thumbs up? Are you ready for us to start?
Can you hear us now?
Yes, Blantyre, I can hear you. Are you guys ready?
If you can hear us, we can present now.
Okay,
I don't know, I
perfect.
thought you said Michael present first.
Nelly, the echo is back on your end, so please could you just ensure that all the microphones are muted on the various logins to the team session. And with that, I believe we can start with our first presentation. So I would like to introduce you all to Mr. Michael Ford. Michael's joining us from the United States. Thank you so much. He's traveling at the moment and still was kind enough to join us today to share his. Michael is somebody who has vast experience. He's been with BDP Logistics for the last 43 years. That's a lifetime, I know, because it's my lifetime. Gave away my age. So Michael, it's wonderful to have you here. I know that you worked as Chief Compliance Officer for a long time and that you're now the Vice President looking after industry and government relations. And you bring extensive experience also in terms of educating people about the US market and the processes and AGOA. And I know you're really passionate about sharing this based on our earlier interactions and different presentations that you've made in partnership with USA Trade Hub. So thank you for taking the time. We really do appreciate it. I would like you just to please share your slides again because we had your intro up on screen. So please could you share them again? And then over to you. Thanks, Michael.
Francis, you can see everything good?
It's perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. So, good afternoon, everyone. As Francis said, my name is Michael Ford. And, you know, I wish I could be in person with you in Malawi. I've not been there. But I did look it up and looked at the wonderful environment that's in and everything like that. So I'm sorry I'm virtual for you today. As Francis said, I'm in the US. And so let me share with you a little bit of information about doing business in the US, big country, big market for goods. And so it's important that we understand, you know, what is a successful way of bringing goods in. I know this is a busy slide, but I just wanted to kind of briefly, you know, talk about it, you know, and when you go to sell goods and move them, you know, you can put them on, you know, a vessel or an aircraft, and there's the carrier filing some information. When goods come into the US, we do need to make a declaration to US Customs. I'll talk a little bit more in depth about that. But what you'll see is you see 7501, 3461, those are just customs forms. It'll go through customs. They'll look for selectivity, meaning do they need to examine it? Do they need to detain it? Do they need to seize it? We hope none of that happens, right? But if everything is great, we move it and it goes to your customer right here in the US. So that's just a very quick flow. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time in there. But let's talk a moment about AGOA, right? It's very important, right? It is a cornerstone of the trade between the US, right, and the sub-Saharan Africa. It's been that way, right, since 2000. So it's a program that provides duty-free access, right, into the US for most, not everything, but most goods that are coming, and we'll say from Malawi, right? So we need to understand, hey, it sounds like we can get duty-free. What do we need to do to enjoy that, right? As I said, it's most, when you look at most of the good products that are coming through, it is a savings. That savings anywhere could be 3 to 5% based on the value of your goods that you're sending in. And it creates, we think, a great environment for you to be a low-cost producer, supplier, or a seller, right, into the US compared to your competition, right? That may be not in the sub-Saharan Africa area, right? So to do this, you know, we want to make sure that we understand what is AGOA origin, what that means, right? And it's talking about, and it says when a product is wholly produced in the exporting country, or at least 35% of the appraised value at the U.S. port of entry, right, consists of materials and processing in an AGOA beneficiary country, right, or more than one AGOA. So if you have work between two AGOA countries that are in the program, that also qualifies, right? So we think it's a nice standard. It helps you as a seller to the U.S. market to achieve a low cost. I just want to touch on this briefly. You know, you may have heard generalized system of preference. That happens to be another program out there. The U.S. does follow the GSP. However, right, as it states, GSP, so generalized system of preference, right? It's another trade program, but it's not active right now. What's that mean is that if you do, for whatever reason, bring goods under the generalized system of preference, you have to pay duties now. There's an opportunity if it gets enacted that it would be duty-free, but at the moment, AGOA is your trade passport for low-cost goods entering into the U.S., right? So it's just something to keep in mind. There is another program, but it's not active right now. Every now and then it has a time period on it, and it expired, and the U.S. Congress did not enact it back into play yet. But let me tell you, and this I think is important because I'd like to speak to you, right? You are the companies in Malawi. You want to be seller into the U.S. market. And that's very important. But let me talk a little bit about the U.S. Rules when goods come into the U.S., right? Who's responsible? And so who is responsible is the party that's importing the goods into the U.S. And Customs, U.S. Customs, looks at the importer of record. So who is bringing those goods into the U.S.? And how the Customs looks at that is there's a tax ID number. They look at that party and they're saying, you are responsible. And to do that, you need to make sure you have the right classification of the goods. You need to make sure that you have the right AGOA origin goods and that you qualify and you can prove that, and that you want to make sure you have the right value. So let me talk a little bit about the tariff system. It may be something that you're familiar with. This, you know, when we talk about tariffs, they're all around the world. I'm sharing with you kind of a snapshot of one item, you know, that looks inside of the U.S. So it's handbags, whether or not with a shoulder strap, including those without handle. And so you can see it's of reptile leather, or it's a value of $20, not over 20, or value over 20. So getting the right classification number, which is on the left, is very, very important. When we go to the right, you can see if it's reptile leather, it's 5.3% duty. If it's value not over $20, there's a 10%, and you can see a 9%. So I mentioned a few minutes ago that it's duty free. If we have goods of this item coming into the U.S., those are the duty rates that you will pay based on the value of the material. However, if you move to the right, it says free, and then it starts giving you like CA and D and IL. Well, the D is AGOA. So if our goods qualify and we can prove origin, we look at the letter D and says handbags coming from Malawi that have an AGOA origin are duty free. So what are we saving? If it's of reptile leather, we're saving 5.3. If it's a value over 20, it's 10% savings or 9%. So you can see that is some significant savings if our goods qualify under AGOA. So what documents do we need? Well, we want to make sure, and this is always important for you as a company in Malawi, right? You want to be paid, so you always have to produce a commercial invoice. That's so you can get paid, but that's also used at the time of clearance in the US, right? A certificate of origin that proves we are actually, our goods qualify under AGOA. There'll be a bill of lading if it's coming in air or ocean. It'll be an airway bill or an ocean bill of lading that's needed, and a packing list. And then every now and then, depending on what we're bringing in, some other US government agencies could be involved. We'll talk a little bit about that. But when we look at the invoice, what's very important, these are the requirements. It must be in English. It must indicate which port it's coming into. It should show your name, right? Because you're the exporter, but also who the importer, who are you selling those goods to, should have a description of the merchandise, how much, the price needs to be in US dollars, should show a country of origin, and then list out the transportation cost, if there's a maritime insurance, all of that should be broken out. This is a basic import invoice requirement. This is needed in the US so that we can prepare an entry of goods entering into the US. If you have questions, I'll take them when I'm done, as well as if your first question is, are you going to share the slides? And the answer is, of course, yes, right? So here's a very important piece. We talk about country of origin marking. So this is a US regulation. Every article of foreign origin should be legibly marked with the English name of the country of origin prior to shipment, right? Unless there's exceptions. So I'll use an example. If I am purchasing a handbag in the US and it came from Malawi, I need to see that it came from Malawi. It needs to be on the handbag. And it can be a tag, or however, but it needs to show that country of origin, right? Something where you're not able to mark is if you're sending in a piece of steel or aluminum, right? That's much harder to mark. But there should be a tag on the outer package of it, right? So the manufacturer, producer, or processor in the US, if the imported material will go through a manufacturing process, then the last person in the US who will receive the article, right, in the form in which it was imported, that's how the rules read. So if you think about it, if I go to a store in the US and I'm purchasing your good, I need to see that origin, and that's what customs will look for. Just some examples. Sorry, I don't have Malawi up there, but you can see other countries there, right? So what is a successful import coming into the US, right? If you're selling your goods, you want to make sure that the importer can bring those goods in at the proper rate. So we want to make sure that we have the right classification. So we briefly showed that handbags. We don't want to choose something that has a low duty rate. We want to choose something that exactly describes the item that we're bringing in. We want to make sure we understand country of origin. We want to make sure that we understand the value and not the cost. So what are we selling the goods for? Not what does it cost for us to make. And that is extremely important. We do not want to undervalue goods. If something like that were to happen and customs found it, they would seize the cargo. Right? We want to make sure all the documents that we have are made available and made available prior to the goods arriving into the US. And then we want to make sure that as we go clearance into the US, right, that we do it timely, we do it accurately, and that we're making sure that we're doing the right set of documents. So let me get a little bit into the government side of this, right? So in the US, Customs is a law enforcement agency, right? That is their goal, is to protect the U.S. From illegal goods, from counterfeit goods. And sorry, I'll go down this other road because you would hear customs say it is, not only illegal goods, but goods that could do harm right into the U.S. And they're at the border. They also, in general, enforce 40 other government agencies' laws and regulations as goods enter into the U.S. So that's a huge task for trade, right? Because not all the government agencies are sitting at the port. There's only a few. So customs has that mandate to manage all of that, right? Again, there are a few exceptions, but in general, customs is at the port. And I think it's really important. So I'm going to repeat that they are a law enforcement agency. One of the requirements inside of the US is advanced data. So there's a requirement to send advanced data. So as goods start their journey for export, they need to be advanced data sent to US Customs. They're doing a security risk, right? So very, very important. That's a requirement that's out there. So before something gets on a vessel, there's a filing of data, and that is looking for cargo security. The right to make entry. So in the US, as goods come in, as it says, merchandise entering into the US must be entered by the owner, purchase, or his or her authorized employee or the licensed customs broker. So BDP, we are a licensed customs broker in the US. And so we act on behalf of many of the companies in the US to bring the goods through US Customs and any of the government agencies, and to ensure that they get into, we'll say, your customers' hands, right? So BDP is one of those. It's what we do. And we act as the agent for the importer in the US. We are licensed by Customs to act on that behalf, to pay duties, to file all the data, and to make sure that those goods get released. So we could see, imports, in general, right? Import licenses are really not required to enter goods into the US. However, there are some restrictions. And at the end of the day, Customs is looking to protect the economy, the security of the US. They're looking to safeguard the consumer health, right? The US person and well-being, to preserve domestic plant and animal life, and to enforce any quotas or restraints regarding certain restrictions of goods coming into the US. We could only get goods to your customer, or they can get cleared only if we meet the customs and any other government agency requirements. Most of all this is data. It is not paper, it's all electronic. One of the most important areas too, I just don't want to make sure that we don't miss it, is because US Customs is very, very keen on cargo security. And they have various programs to ensure that the cargo that it's arriving in the US, that they do a risk assessment and they allow it to move quick. So they have a program, it's called CTPAT, where they ask US industries to come in and work with them and share supply chain security protocols. The security filing, I mentioned, so before something gets on a vessel, there's data that needs to be sent to Customs. Customs themselves are looking at the ports, and they have security at various ports around the world, where they're looking at a risk factor of the goods coming in. And then if something's arriving air, again, there's an advanced data for air called ACAS. The ocean carriers or air carriers all have to submit data. So not only is it the exporter or the importer, but the carriers involved also has to submit data. And so they do that via their manifest. And so they will let customs know this is what's on our ship, and in the case of air, what's on our aircraft. So one of the other areas that I just want to touch on briefly, and then I'll open up and allow your questions that you have, is I mentioned customs and how important it is. I mentioned customs that says over 40 agencies they're mandating. However, one of the other big government agencies that is at the port is FDA, our Food and Drug. And under there, our Food and Drug FDA agency has additional information that they're going to require. And it's all submitted at the time of entry. So if you have product that falls under FDA, we have to go get a customs release and an FDA release. And FDA will also at times inspect the cargo also. What falls under FDA? This is just an example of some things. You know, infant formula, canned frozen foods, fruits and vegetables. So when we say, you know, FDA Food and Drug, it kind of makes sense. I understand what those are. But there's also, you know, some of the medical devices or biologic products or even devices all fall under FDA. So a general guidance for you is if it touches a human skin, it's probably falling under FDA, just to give you an idea. That's how that works. All right. So let me finish up with FDA. So FDA is very, very important and can sometimes impact. So depending on our goods, I mean, if we have handbags, that's not going to fall under FDA. However, but if we send any type of food product, any type of skin product, any type of herbal product or whatever, it's probably going to fall under Food and Drug. And they have their own regulations. And as you can see, with the exception of, sorry, it's on a little, meat and poultry, all food, drugs, biologics, cosmetics, medical, and electronic products that emit radiation, right, are subject to Food and Drug, right? So there's some information. It becomes very, very important in the world of anything that falls under Food and Drug. And if you ever have questions, you know, BDP in the US, we can help if you have questions like, is this under FDA? The answer would be yes. And then we would tell you what those requirements would be. So I was given about 20 minutes. I think I've met my time there, Francis. I'm sharing with you my address at work. We're all, you know, still remote generally, but I've also given you my email address. If you ever have questions after this session and you need to email me, there is my email. I also give you my cell phone. So Francis, I will stop and see what kind of questions that we may have.
Thanks so much, Michael. Please feel free to leave that last slide up for a bit longer because I think people may want to take down your details. Thank you.
Okay.
I have is, do you, if you're a Malawian sitting here, what services could they reach out to you for?
Okay.
If they're wanting to export to the United States?
Yeah. So if they want to export to the U.S., some of the Malawi companies, you know, I think it's important to understand what are the costs in the U.S., right? And you know what cost, you know, even though it may be duty free, I think it's good to understand what that duty cost will be, or some other cost about you know, getting it through customs. I think the other opportunity could be, you know, how are there other options or things that I can do as a business person to take advantage of the U.S. market and bring goods in even at a lower cost or help to reduce my cost. There are some other programs depending on what you're doing. If you know, if you're shipping a product that's not final, right? And you want to bring it into the U.S. and allow maybe a little bit of processing and then sold to the U.S. Market. You know, those are opportunities also that are out there. But I think also they may have some questions regarding how do I know my goods qualify under AGOA, right? How do I know? And what should I really be doing to prove that? Or should I be making a few other decisions to make sure it qualifies if it doesn't today?
Thanks, Michael. So are you saying that if questions about whether their products are AGOA eligible, they could reach out to you as part of what?
Yes. I can direct them into other, you know, if I'm not in the office, I can direct them into the BDP network. Sure. And let them qualify. Yeah. Get them their information. Yes.
And then does BDP?
Sorry, Francis, on that one I didn't hear. And I heard you say NBDP.
Do BDP, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Do BDP help firms to clear customs and to get their products into the United States? And that's obviously a service that you offer. And then once it's cleared, do you offer third-party logistics services or three-party logistics, warehousing, fulfillment? What are those kind of paid-for services that you would offer?
Yes. And so the easy answer is yes to all of the above. Our core business is to clear it through customs, assess the charges, and then that next step is once it leaves a port, you know, how do I get it to the middle of the country or the other side of the country? And yes, we do all those services for many companies. Maybe someone's also looking for a warehouse to hold the goods for a few months while they are then being sold. Because maybe you want to think about, well, I want to move goods into the U.S. and kind of create a small inventory so that when I have a sale, I can ship it in a few days. Things like that, those opportunities, yes, BDP offers that to help companies take advantage of those opportunities, but also give them guidance saying, this is what you should think about. This will help you, you know, improve your customer service or something along that lines.
Fantastic. So I think one of the things that was very important for me to understand about the US is
Francis, I'm sorry, you cut off there on me. Yeah, one of the things important about the US, and then
Okay. I was saying one of the things that's important about the US that I didn't understand is that there are different service providers that do different things in that value chain, from clearing customs to warehousing to then onward fulfillment. And it's really important to find a suitable service provider that matches your product, the speed at which you're moving products, because they charge in different ways. So you need to do your research when you're looking for a company to work with that's got experience, that's well reputed. They're not a red flag with customs, because some agencies like this will also be problematic. They're known for bringing in bad products. So you have to do your due diligence in terms of the service providers that you use in the US and understand the different costing and pricing that happens in terms of all of those services. Yeah. So just to mention that, I don't know if you want to expand on that a bit, Michael.
I do, Francis, you know, and because you brought up an excellent point, and the reason why I want to say that is, so BDP, we are not really what I would call in the e-commerce business. So if you came to us with an e-commerce solution, we probably wouldn't be your best match. There are, and it's exactly like you said, there are other providers who specialize in e-commerce because that is a different market. It's got different services. It's got different demands to it. And we're not really built for that. We are built for small, medium, and large size companies that would import regularly, not a small package. And it doesn't need to be multiple containers, but it's more than just a small pack, as I call, right? Something that's arriving via like a UPS or FedEx. That's not us. They do very well at that. That's their business model.
Fantastic. Thanks for clarifying that. I think there are so many providers that have a very specific focus. So I think it's just important to. There's some guys who only deal with, massive shipments of stuff coming in. To Michael's point, they don't own big shipments. They do smaller, like pallets, or as long as it's regular, not the kind of stuff that FedEx would deal with. So thanks, Michael. Yep. I'm going to open up to the floor for a couple of questions. Anyone in Lilongwe with a question for Michael? I don't see any hands here. Let's check in Blantyre. There's a bit of a sound challenge there. It seems like the system's gone down there, but Nelly or Bochilo, I think we're using your laptop. Let me know if there are any questions there. Okay, I don't see anything. Any questions online? If you do, please raise your hand.
There's no question in Blantyre.
Okay, thanks, Nelly. Well heard. Yes, I've got a question here, Tawana.
Yeah, he talked about where now you have to process your goods. How long does it take for that process to be completed? Because sometimes it can delay the movement of goods.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great question. So I'll answer it in a couple ways for you. So if you're a first-time shipper, or the goods are coming in for the first time, there's a very good chance you're going to be stopped and examined by customs. And the reason is more of the lack of history. So if there's no history, customs has a harder time understanding risk. So to them, that's a higher risk shipment. And it's not something that you personally should look at and say, but we're a good company and we do good things. It's just more of a risk value that they have. However, let's say that you've had a series of shipments coming through and it can be one a month, it can be one a quarter. That's okay. As long as there's a little bit of a history. When goods arrive air, they should be released within 24 hours. And if they're ocean, probably, 24 to 48 hours, I'll say a working day, right? So if something comes in on a Saturday, probably Monday it's going to be released. It should be. And that's what you should plan for. That's what you should expect. Given the information, any documents, everything is, in order. There's no question regarding AGOA origin. We have the right value. We got the right classification. That's what you should expect and plan for. 24 to 48 hours, 1 or 2 business days.
Fantastic. Thank you. And I think what's crucial here is that's if everything is going smoothly. If things go wrong, then it can get stuck for a while, and that's when the cost comes in. So just to give some quantification, one of the companies we work with, they were importing charcoal into the United States. It's a wood product, red flag. Charcoal, red flag, because other charcoal comes from... So it ticked a first-time exporter, Namibia, not known for charcoal. It was just red. So every shipment got for a long time, and it's for each cost was about $5,000 in terms of storing that container, waiting for the process to happen, and then there was still damage because they went into the packets, damaged the packaging. So that's a bad worst-case scenario. but that's, you have to really invest in getting the documents right, get somebody like me to Michael, I think we're going to have to stop there. It's so lovely having you with us and joining
Thank you,
us.
everyone. Yeah. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Super. Degu, I feel like I've taken over here. Like to take over again. Fantastic. So we're going to try and join up with the team in Blantyre again. So perhaps while Degu's coming up to the podium, we could before we get going, and then Doug can introduce Paul. There was a technical challenge there. Okay, we've got a visual. Check. Mr. Conga, so much for your willingness to move things around to accommodate the earlier speaker. Let us do a sound check.
Hello.
Hi, that sounds perfect. Okay, hang 10 if you don't mind. I'm going to hand back to Degu to introduce you properly. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. I know it's stretching now, considering that we've been with information. But now here comes another session that informational, giving us welcome on board, Paul. And as I said, area Paul is from Malawi Bureau of Standards, is the quality monitoring officer, and he'll give us a presentation on what the Malawi Bureau of Standards does in order to promote the exports from Malawi. Over to you, Paul. Thank you.
Thank you. As you have already heard, my name is Paul Konje, and I'm working with Malawi Bureau of Standards as quality monitoring officer. And I want to present on quality assurance services offered by Malawi Bureau of Standards, a window for quality export products. I would like to ask someone to beam the presentation for me. Hello. 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 Yeah. Of course, I wanted to say I'm glad to present after several other experts have already presented, because I heard some terms which were being mentioned, which will also be mentioned in my presentation, terms like quality, requirements, product standards. So first of all, I wanted us to define the term quality. There are many definitions of this term: fitness of a product for intended purpose, degree to which a set of inherent characteristics in a product fulfills requirements, expectations of a consumer or customer. Quality relates to satisfaction of customer needs or requirements. Anybody that has an interest in a product or aspects of a product is a customer, e.g. consumers, regulators, and consumer associations. For regulatory purposes and to achieve a harmonized approach, agreed requirements for products are found in standards. What are standards? A standard is a document that outlines minimum acceptable levels related to inherent characteristics or features of a product. To ensure common standards on products, countries are required to adopt, adapt, or develop their own national standards based on international standards by ISO, IEC, or CAC. Therefore, unless standards for products are complied with, quality cannot be achieved, hence no customer satisfaction. There are several quality assurance schemes offered by the MBS. There is product certification scheme for local and imported products, management systems certification scheme, training services for product standards as well as system standards, and export quality certification scheme. Product certification scheme for local products. This is mandatory for products having mandatory standards or technical regulations, e.g. food products. And what is the path to certification? A company registers into the scheme before introducing products on the market. ABS undertakes initial audits on production processes and products. Products are subjected to laboratory assessments against applicable standards. Products are permitted to be sold or used upon meeting minimum compliance levels against their standards. Surveillance activities, including process audits, product audits, and market surveys are conducted to monitor the compliance of products on the local market. Compliance certificates, which are subject to revocation, are issued to products that demonstrate consistent compliance to applicable standards. Production operations for non-complying products are suspended to allow for redress of shortfalls. Non-complying products are confiscated out of selling points during market spot checks. Export quality certification scheme. The export certification scheme, the export quality certification scheme is voluntary at the meantime. Exporters request for certification services depending on buyers' requirements. Inspection of the batch intended for export and sampling is done at the exporter's premises. Samples are tested against buyers' specifications. Conformance certificate is issued only to complying products. The challenge has been that other importing countries demand conformance certificates from accredited laboratories. Malawi Bureau of Standards laboratories are accredited in a number of scopes. Because full accreditation takes quite a long process, so we are still in the phase of accrediting other scopes. So there are just a number of scopes in which MBS is accredited at the meantime. Training services. The MBS offers trainings in areas of food hygiene, ASIP, quality management system development and auditing, laboratory management practices to process workforce, as well as top management as part of capacity building efforts on quality assurance. Quality versus exports. Achieving quality is not by chance, but by choice. Understand your customer requirements and aim at satisfying them. Our customers on the international arena are also other exporters' customers. And unless we satisfy their expectations, we will lose them. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Konje. Can you hear me?
Hello?
Just hang on for some questions. Blantyre, can you hear me? Okay. Please mute Blantyre. Okay. Okay. Let me hand over to my colleagues in Blantyre to take the questions then, so that we minimize the feedback and also speed up the flow there. Blantyre, please do take the questions. Thank you. Okay. We can't hear you, Blantyre. So maybe if you can summarize the questions and maybe just try to find a way how we can. Are you able to unmute? We can't hear you. And we didn't hear the question, and we can see Mr. Konja talking, but we don't hear anything.
Sorry, I'll ask again. I said I'm Bartol Mizimbe from Quality House International. Mr. Konja, in the presentation, you alluded that there were some markets where the Malawi Bureau of Standards certification is not practical, is not accepted. Now, I wanted to find out if AGOA was one of those markets. Thank you.
I think, first of all, I wanted to get it clear because what I said is that Malawi Bureau of Standards is accredited in a number of scopes, meaning to say that there are other scopes in which MBS is not accredited. I didn't necessarily mean that MBS is not accepted in other markets. So perhaps there is an interest to know which scopes MBS is accredited at the meantime. MBS is accredited in Testing Services Department in the determination of aflatoxin in cereals, pulses, and related products. That's the first one. The second one is it's accredited in the assessment of E. coli, total coliform bacteria, and heterotrophic plate count in water. And then in the Material Services Department, MBS is accredited in mass calibration of 2 to 200 gram equipment. And then additionally, MBS is also accredited in Management Systems Certification Division in ISO 17021 under ISO 9001 scope, and in food, beverage, and tobacco, and also in rubber and plastic products. So in terms of the specific scopes in which MBS is accredited, they are the ones I've just listed now. Thank you.
We have a question from Lilongwe. Blantyre.
Thank you. Mine is just a quick one. Just wanted to know if MBS is able to facilitate international certification for SMEs. Thank you.
Would you please repeat the question? Thank you.
Thank you. I want to know if MBS is able to facilitate international certification for SMEs, local SMEs. Thank you. In standards, for example, I'm biased to food products. Thank you.
Okay, so are there any internationally accredited food safety standards that MBS has accreditation for at this stage? Am I clear?
Can you clarify the first speaker's question, or because I think I got the first question very loud and clear. So I wanted to go ahead and respond to the question. The straight answer to that question is yes. At the meantime, MBS is doing trainings for small scale traders, conjunction with CIVIC. MBS entered into an MOU with CIVIC. So it means the requirements for certification for small scale traders is not at the same cost with the large-scale traders. What they pay for certification services, small-scale traders, is 50% of what large-scale pay for. So they can access certification services. They need to export them. Thank you.
Thank you. Unfortunately, the sound quality is very good. So I think I'm going to suggest that we leave it at that for today. We are also already approaching 5 o'clock. It is to have somebody. I do believe there's a lot of complementarity in terms of preparing for certifications as part of this ecosystem. As some of the participants mentioned here earlier, the internationally accredited organizations are expensive of deciphering where you can get what services from. And I think it's really MBS in terms of having these standards in place as part of the AGOA steering committee work. So I think we take point, and I would like to thank Mr. Paul very much for his contribution today under very difficult technical circumstances. So thank you for bearing with us. It was great to hear from you. Thank you, sir. So we are running slightly late, but the good news, or maybe it's bad news, is that none of the Malawian participants who visited Cape Town were able to join us after all. But I can tell you what I learned in Cape Town briefly. So I have a short video that summarizes the experience that we will use as the close for today. So maybe let me share a little bit about the program that we had in Cape Town, because I think it's really interesting to know that Malawi is not the only country that's grappling with this. AGOA is a massive opportunity, and there are many countries that are not able to take advantage or that haven't been able to take advantage of this and trade significant volumes of products. Because of all of the things that we've been discussing today, requirements that need to be met, lots of information that needs to be deciphered, practical things that you need to learn and do. And some of that you have to learn. It's like a baby learning to walk. You have to crawl around, you walk, you're running marathons. So it's a process that we have to go through. Indeed. In town, we had a few AGOA steering committees talk to their experience of guiding enabling private sector to take advantage of AGOA. Showcased the Botswana steering committee just because they were one of the first countries in the region to have their strategy put in place. And so they've had a bit of a time. They've actually been through a revision of their strategy already. And what they did was, in their steering committee, they set up subcommittees. Just 4 subcommittees in priority sectors that they identified. And those subcommittees got together in a work $1 million of $1 million. Going to do? What are the first steps to us achieving that? Who, what, whether exports happen? And then they engaged with different actors in the market to see who could help. If it was about getting a stand. To actually make it was a really session where different committees shared their experiences and challenges. Other thing that really is to involve private sector. Steering committee is driven by government. They're there to CDs when those business. The incentive lies with private sector. So we need private sector, the guys who've got to go through this, pay the school fees, to be part of driving that process. So that's where the associations and organized private sector is very important in terms of bringing the practicalities of to the during the study tours focused on food and agricultural products, mainly processed foods, on products. We the companies were not these huge, a Coca-Cola production line with machines, and that's not the case. The companies that were visited in some cases were 4 or 5 people making beautiful handcrafted handbags, leather ties, larger soda factory that developed the flavors, but they didn't even manufacture the sodas themselves. They outsourced the manufacturing to a factory that has the relevant standards. There's a salt company that has the rights to mine Kalahari salt, and they're just very good with packaging it. It's not a big factory, it's smaller than this. And so I think the big aha moment for a lot of people there was, you don't have to be this massive company to take advantage of AGOA. You can be smart, you can find a niche market, you need to get the basics right, you've got to get the compliance, the packaging, the standards right, but you don't have to be huge. So that was a really important lesson. And then the last lesson, which I think I'll share before we move to the video, the whole idea of how do you deal with competition. If you try and do this on your own, it's going to be much harder than if you in which cooperation. Maybe it's about finding complement together to get economies of scale. You share a shipping container. You go through some process. I'm thinking about doing eucalyptus oil that creates cooperation between companies so that you can get economies of scale, you can share. Don't try and do everything on your own. And I think that often we're worried about losing out because of competition. But the reality is that buyers will quickly decide what they want. If there's a beautiful range of 10 baskets, 5. If there's a beautiful range of handicrafts, a buyer doesn't want to just have baskets. They want to have a mixture of different products that they can put on a nice display. So only pushing your baskets is not going to help to necessarily open those doors. So I think throughout the 2 days that we were in Cape Town, that message came through very strongly from different people. It was from exporting companies. It was also from some of our partners that help to do linkages. And their experience of working with buyers. So I think food for thought, that those would be my key pointers from Cape Town. We are going to try and play a video. We're playing it off YouTube out of Pretoria, so let's pray that the internet works with us. My colleague Mabatu is going to take us away. Mabatu, over to you.
I should obviously say thank you very much to the USAID Trade Hub with the support of Westgrow for inviting us to this meeting. It is important for any agreement of this nature for us to take a moment and pause, reflect on the impact of the agreement in the work and the ecosystem we find ourselves in, because the only way we can maximize potential from it is if we do reflections of this nature. So on behalf of USAID Trade Hub and Westgrow, I just want to say thank you to you for making the time to travel the distances that you did to come and be part of this very important meeting. This is very much an event that has been organized by USAID Trade Hub, and its purpose is really for us to learn and to grow and to see how we can maximize potential out of the agreement. That has been enabled, of course, with generous support from Westgrow, which is the Cape Town and Western Cape Tourism Trade and Investment Agency. And to speak on behalf of Westgrow is the newly appointed CEO. Please welcome to the podium, Ronald Stander, the CEO of Westgrow.
It is indeed my privilege to welcome all of you to this unique AGOA regional learning event. And while I was meeting people this morning, I believe that we have 9 countries from the region in the room. I think this is absolutely spectacular. The next 2 days are really about partnership. And at Westgrow, we believe that collaboration is the key to success. And that is why we are really, really proud and privileged to be supporting this event. Now, for those of you that do not know Westgrow, Westgrow is the trade, tourism and investment promotion agency for Cape Town and the Western Cape province. In addition to the sort of traditional sources of funding, we also work in a space where we convene different stakeholders to try and achieve a certain outcome. So in line with our mandate, which obviously is mandated in legislation, Westgrow works to position the Western Cape as an investment destination of choice, a sought-after market globally, and a world-class tourism destination.
So what is AGOA, and is it only about trade preferences? It's not. It's a much bigger thing than just about preferential market access. It's a platform for engagement, or forum for engagement as I call it here, literally and figuratively, because it has created an avenue for African countries and the United States to work together and engage much more closely. But it's also a forum for engagement because the AGOA legislation mandates the annual holding of a trade and investment forum. And that has been taking place every year except for one in 2020 as a result of COVID.
My name is Frank O'Brien. I'm the Chief Party of the USAID Trade Hub. One of the key takeaways for me is that the potential of the whole program and the opportunity that it offers to the different countries and the exporters within the different countries is very considerable. And sometimes I think exporters or companies or individuals, because they don't fully understand the opportunity that's presented, they are reluctant to engage in this as a way forward. There are still 3 years remaining under this current program, and a lot of expertise through trial and error and through trying the process has been established across the region over the past 7 years. So building on that, there's still room for export growth, retaining exports, and gaining a footprint within the US market between now and 2025.
Good afternoon. My name is Gaurav Vijayavargiya. I'm from 260 Brands based in Lusaka, Zambia. And we've spent 2 days here in Cape Town thanks to the USAID Southern African Trade and Investment Hub. And it's been a phenomenal, incredible experience over the last 2 days. Overwhelming in terms of the learnings that we've taken on board, having exported our first container to the US last year and learning from various stakeholders in similar positions. There's been an incredible amount that I've learned and taken away to benefit to increase our trade to the US and also into the South African market.
My name is Madela Skonyela. I'm working for the Lesotho National Development Corporation as a trade facilitation and promotion manager. I think the model that was adopted by Botswana to implement the AGOA response strategy could be a good benchmark for Lesotho. Firstly, coordination is at high level, where they engaged the minister and the PS's office. This will ensure that they get the buy-in from the highest ranking officers.
Hi, my name is Emil Swanepoel. I'm co-founder of Weave. Weave is a gentleman's lifestyle brand. We specialize in handmade leather ties, bow ties, pocket squares and suspenders, and other leather accessories. Obviously, it's small beginnings, but all creative action needs is just a workspace, and this is exactly what it is. And we've been here for about 7 years. And as we just showed them, everything's produced here by hand. We make everything we do, we make with love. We absolutely love what we do. And to know that there are teams out there from Westgrow that are actually looking after the smaller entrepreneur, it is incredible. And thank them for their work, and also just the support for entrepreneurs like myself.
I think with all the presentations that took place yesterday, leveraging and benefiting from AGOA is more critical now, such that the renewal is going to be done in less than 3 years. So I think the time is now to act, and we need to leverage the duty-free benefits that we have, especially for products that are in our value chain, and we work on soy and maize, and I think that's something that we'll try and act on.
My name is Justine Schaefer, and I'm the third generation of Cape Cobra Leathercraft. We are a family business established in 1972, and we specialize in manufacturing exotic leather handbags and accessories, proudly made in Cape Town, South Africa. We are celebrating 50 years this year, and we're really looking forward to the next 50 years. I'm coming into the business with a new energy. We are expanding our own brand into the US market, and we are looking to compete with international brands and show them that South African made products are just as good as they are in Italy and France.
Would like to take this opportunity to really thank the USAID team. You guys have done a phenomenal job so far, and I think it's very sustainable what has been done. There's been a lot of technical assistance and support that we have definitely benefited from, like many others that you've supported, and we're very grateful for the support, and look forward to continued support, and thank you very much.
Awesome, thank you. Thank you for your patience. I know it's late, but it's really a precious moment for us to be together and to learn and to share some experiences. So thank you for being the strongest last people to stay here, both those online, those in Blantyre, and those here in Lilongwe. You are the stalwarts. Some of the participants here have been here since early this morning in the certification session as well. So you are really the stalwarts. I think just from my end, a couple of small requests. We have a feedback form, both in Word, which is available. Please give us your feedback. As much as the USA Trade Hub is kind of closing out, where we have word that there is a project that's coming up that'll hopefully continue some of the work that we've been doing. And so we would love to have your feedback in terms of, areas that you still want to learn about, what you need to know, so that we can pass that through. And please give us areas for improvement. A big thank you to the tech teams both here and in Blantyre, as well as in Pretoria, our comms team and Mabatu, who have been supporting us all day. And yesterday in the dry runs, it's really, it was, I think, a bit of a stressful pilot test of doing a new hybrid. So thank you very much for everything that you've done to make it a success. I think it went really well with quite an ambitious technological ask. So thank you very much to you. Also, thank you to the USA Trade Hub team, Degru, Frank, Buchilo, Nelly, everyone who's here on the ground making this happen. For the participants online, there is a feedback form that you can complete. I've shared the link in the chat. Please could you just click on that link and give us feedback. There are not a lot of questions. It shouldn't take you too long, but please do take the time to give us feedback. With that, I guess we are done for the day. So thank you. It's kind of sad in a way, but I think also relieved. I'm sure you want to all hit the road. So thank you for your patience. Have a good evening.